we are actually live now, a mere 17 minutes late, which is not too bad considering we haven't done this in 7 months. Actually, it might be a little bit more than that. It was, what, August when we were at the car show?
And in any case, you'll get 17 minutes of extra at the end when we inevitably fail repeatedly to wrap the stream.
Yeah.
So it all works out.
Absolutely get all of the time. It'll just be delayed. Oh, my phone is currently playing the stream as well, which I planned on doing. I just forgot the volume was up. So, yes, we are back. We have rewired a significant amount of this room to move a huge amount of stuff about and try and improve the view of things. So we've moved the lights around so they're not glaring in the screen anymore. We've moved a bunch of the tech around so it's just easier to work with, and added some new bits which you can just see in the corner of frame. We now have this nice Atom control panel to do all of our camera control through, which has decided to disconnect from the rest of the system just before we were about to go live. So that is just fantastic. But we have got all of you watching, which frankly is good enough. We have people
9
here,
viewers, probably like half of whom are in this room.
Maybe.
But
and we have a Loki as well, who's coming to look at all of the things that we're going to talk about on this live stream. Yeah, you sniff that.
And we have some of a fighting robot
Indeed.
that Adrian and I and a couple of other friends built all the way back in 2016, and he's been sat in a box.
I was trying to remember when
since.
it was.
It was almost exactly 8 years ago. It was this time, 2016.
Yes, so we saw RobotWars was doing another series, 2016, and they announced it in February, and that was lovely, and we went, yeah, I reckon we could do that.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, we've never built a robot before. We can't weld at this point. Or, no, you could vaguely
I'd welded like a tiny bit. It was literally
Sam
like an
could
exhaust
weld
on a bike
vaguely as well,
or something.
Yeah, but it was the most basic of stuff. It's snot welds. That's what we could do.
Like, none of us had welded, none of us had soldered, none of us had programmed like microcontroller stuff, none of us had done any RC. Actually, you'd probably done like a little bit of RC.
I had a remote control car that came as a kit.
Yeah, okay. So that was where we were at the start of like the whole Robot Wars process.
Yeah.
And we had 5 weeks.
And they said, we're filming a series in 5 weeks. Anybody with a robot should contact us, and you will come to Glasgow and we'll film and do all of the things. We're like, yeah, we can do that.
The slightly terrifying thing is, like, the UK, as much as it's been fairly quiet, it's not on TV, it does have an active fighting robot scene. So, like, there are robots ready to go. There are, like, 100-kilo, heavyweight class robots just ready to go. And there were enough of them to pretty much fully populate the show. They wanted, like, 32 robots or something like that. We did not have a robot, had no track record, had no reason to believe that we would have a robot, and we were offered one of the first round of 32 slots anyway. They were actual, working, built fighting robots with pedigree that were bumped out of the show to make room for our design on the strength of the design.
They were bumped onto the reserve list, at least.
No, sorry, yeah, bumped onto reserves because they knew that they'd be failures.
They were bumped off top tier, I think, because our USP was, we're idiots, we have no engineering background whatsoever.
I don't think that's what they wanted. They want, because our design was pretty unique.
5 weeks.
Well, yeah.
That was it. It was, these guys have built a robot in 5 weeks. This is what they made.
Well, from our perspective, that's what we like. Yeah. But from the show's perspective, Doomba, the robot that we ended up building, was an invertible all-aspect spinner.
Yes.
So it's one of like the flywheel robots, a bit like Hypnodisc, except it worked both ways up.
It had no back.
Yeah, there was the spinner was the whole body.
Omnidirectional.
Yeah. And that was actually really quite novel. I'm only aware of one other robot with all of those features ever. Unfortunately, it applied to the same Robot Wars that we did, and it worked. And that was called Mr. Speed Squared. And I seem to remember him being pretty good.
Yeah, pretty much.
Quite sad that we weren't quite as unique as I hoped.
Yeah, not as unique. I mean, we were unique because we were one of 2 and we didn't work. So. Unfortunately, having spent, 4 weeks building the robot, they announced it, we said, yes, we should do this, and by the time we all congregated in one location to actually have a crack at designing it, coming up with it, and putting it down into, I made it in SketchUp.
Yeah.
I designed the entire thing in Google SketchUp, which,
so yeah, we
as
did
you'll
it in
know-
SketchUp overnight, because I think the bunch of us, most of us worked together down in Southampton at the time, and we all just kind of go, oh, do you want to build a robot for RobotWars? Wouldn't that be wacky?
Wouldn't that be a crazy
and
idea?
then we all just came up here and we basically just burned an entire night and designed like the rough outline of the thing. And in fairness, we stayed pretty true to it.
We
There wasn't
designed
much
it in
that we
designed it in 8 hours, including like bearing carriers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And
then it was that design that we submitted and got
Hi, Loki.
approved. Oh,
Careful
Loki needs to not step on anything this way.
Yes.
Loki, I'm sorry, buddy.
Loki. This is Loki, for those of you who have never seen the stream before. This is our resident house panther, who's just...
It's okay, he can be there.
You can sit there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
You sit there. Yes, that's absolutely fine. You just don't necessarily roll into anything.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
can
if you come
protect the
this way a little
contraption.
bit-
It's okay, I can just do this.
Are you going to come this way, Sam? So anyway, yeah, so everybody got here at about 8 o'clock. Like, we ordered some food, started designing, and we finished at about 4 a.m. Now, bearing in mind, my computer at the time was in my bedroom, so my other half, Yola, she fell asleep on the bed, albeit not in bed, whilst we were doing this, as did Nikki.
It was not a comfortable place to be for 8 hours. I was sat like on,
You were sat on the end
of the
yeah,
bed.
It's like a sleigh bed, so
Yeah.
it's got a big wooden footer to it, and that was uncomfortable to be perched on.
So yeah, designed a robot in 8 hours, submitted the design.
Yeah. And when
The
I
guys
think
at
we can
RobotWars
make
said,
this-
yeah, that looks quite good. We'll have that.
Yeah.
And gave us a slot ahead of like actual working robots. Yeah.
real life working robots. Now I've got a picture of it here that I will put on my secondary screen.
It was at that point that we panicked.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Cool.
just maximise it a bit.
Because yeah, so at that point we realised
Like
that we,
I can see. If you
we
put
then
it
had-
on there, then I can use my mouse.
yeah, because the moment we were accepted, we knew we had about 4 weeks.
Yes.
To
It was
because
it was
obviously we
basically
had a
that.
design, but we weren't going to commit to like actually constructing the thing.
Timeline, it was approximately they announced it on Monday.
Yeah.
We talked about it sort of, wouldn't it be funny, across that for a few days. Then everybody came up either Friday or Saturday night. We designed it, submit it on the Sunday, and we heard back from them like Monday afternoon.
I can't
going,
remember.
yeah, brilliant, let's do it. So none of us can weld, really,
Yep.
at a serious level.
Vibs, I'm convinced, could solder.
Yes.
But at that point, there was all sorts of like weird stuff with his employment and
Yes.
or past employment,
Yes.
and I think he was a bit iffy about sharing any of his skills.
Yes.
So I ended up doing all the soldering,
You ended
which
up
I wasn't
soldering.
very good at.
I was mostly on tools.
Yeah.
Sam and you were on welding,
Yeah, I wrote the software.
and you wrote the software.
Yeah,
Vibs largely bankrolled it.
he did actually. Yeah, I remember getting. I got a message
and
off
we
him.
used his house.
Yes, we built it. Yeah, so Vibs provided us the actual workshop and most of the money. 'cause-
Workshop.
Yeah,
It was literally a lean-to on his patio, which we took over for the better part of a month.
yeah.
So we got all of this stuff done, and
You say all of it. We didn't actually finish it. We were
No.
still working on it at the studio.
yes. I mean, this. Bearing in mind, this isn't completely finished even in this picture. This is just one of the first pictures that we took of it complete in its box, ready to be parceled up to
And
go.
that would have been like hours, if hours, maybe at most a day before we left.
That box was, yes, but that doesn't have the weapon on. So
True.
that's definitely well before we installed that, or that's using the substitute
That
weapon.
might be using the other ring. Yeah.
So, we've decided we're going to make this twin clamshell affair, and it's going to have an orbiting weapon that goes around the side, the inside of it. Brilliant. How do we make that? And we have to stay within all sorts of limits for the overall weight of the robot, the maximum amount of kinetic mass, including the maximum amount of weight and mass for the whole robot as well, which was 125 kilos for the heavyweight. From memory, the weapon could be up to 20% of that.
Yeah, I think with a spinner, your spinner is allowed to be 20% of your robot's
Yeah.
total weight,
Yeah.
2,000 RPM,
Yeah.
and 2 foot or something like roughly like that in diameter,
But you were allowed to break one of those rules.
with permission.
Yes.
So you could go bigger or heavier or faster
Yeah.
if you cleared it with production.
Yeah. And so you're like, oh, I'm just going to make it go faster and make it do 10,000 RPM, but right on the limit, they're going to tell you no, go
Yeah.
away, you're insane. So we stuck within all of the limits, and I think we went over by all of about 5 or 10 centimeters at most. Like we were very close in, and it was just a packaging thing based on what we could actually get made. was this ring, which I think is about, give or take, 2 feet across from memory. And this is what we got made. And at one point, we were naive and we were like, oh yeah, no, we can totally make this into a rolled thing. And I angrily denounced our skills on that. It was like, no, we cannot.
This is one of the few bits of the robot that we had actually properly specially made.
This absolute behemoth is something, I think it's a bit over half an inch. It might be like 15 mil steel. It is solid. In fact, I've got a convenient vernier, and all I need to do is not drop this on my laptop. I've got it leaning back slightly.
Okay.
Unless I panic, it should be fine. So, this is 60 mil tall and 15 mil. Good guess. So yeah, so 60 by 15 of mild steel. And we got this professionally rolled because, as I say, there was absolutely no way, and I was vehemently of that opinion all the way up until it arrived, and then everybody else looked at it and went, yeah, there's no way we could have done that. And like, when we're spinning it at 2,000 RPM, concentricity matters. And the fact that we welded a bunch of stuff onto this and then completely imbalanced it, albeit hopefully enough, because it was opposite one another.
I wouldn't have been super worried about balance. On reflection, the thing I should have worried about is the amount of heat that we put in by welding it may have, like, egged it a bit.
I don't think, I mean, the amount of mass in this, I
It's
think
a pretty serious
fine.
piece of metal, yeah.
So yeah, so that was the starting point.
Sorry, before we get too far ahead, that thing spun at 2,000 RPM, according to, like, by regulation, we probably could go quicker if we ever figured out the drive system, we could go quicker. And at 2,000 RPM, the actual, like, the teeth that we put on the thing, obviously that's just the flywheel, but the heads,
down here,
which we'll show you in a minute, would be moving at something
I
like
put that on his
55 mile an hour.
Yeah, the tips on the outside of that would be travelling at 55 miles an hour, and the beam itself weighed 25 kilos all up. So it was an absolute weapon.
Yeah.
And we ran it once while we were testing. We never ran the weapon at full speed up until we got. Where's Loki up there?
There is a video on the on the old Facebook page.
I've got it up here.
Oh, you've actually got it.
I've got it there. So before we get into that,
okay, fair enough.
This was one of the clamshells.
Or I call them cake tins.
Yeah, cake tin is probably more accurate, realistically. It's like a tin of roses, but it's very, very big. It is, I don't know how many sides it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's 16 sides, which at one point, once upon a time, we had a crazy notion that we would make this a perfect circle. No. So it became 16-sided, and the back of this is covered in various welds. We made the wheel holes too big, so we just welded an additional plate on because more armor, it'll be fine. So we have.
If I remember right, that's actually 2 entire 3 mil sheets of steel.
No, not 3. So this one is 3 mil.
Yeah.
Here, and then the one above it is either 1.5 or 2 mil. In fact,
so it's like 5 mil thick.
Check it out.
Yeah. We've got like near enough 5 mil. It's
steel. Actually, if you want to call it composite armor, because technically it's made of multiple layers, it's
no,
5.5 mil.
No, composite's multiple materials.
Like
I'm not giving you that one.
Like we know what grade
Air doesn't count as a core in a structure.
Air is a core. Layers are layers.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see why we had.
I'll sit it here.
I don't want it to tear that.
No,
and it probably will. So I'm going to attempt to put it down, but all of these holes that we drilled in, this is to mount the 2 clamshells together, 2 parts of the cake tin. God,
that is about the heaviest part of the whole machine.
Lies. Damned lies, because that is the heaviest part of the whole machine.
What's that?
The weapon.
Really? The ring is heavier than...
It's so much more. I've got it. I've got it enough. You got it?
Yeah.
I suppose you've got steels on. I am wearing slippers. And this... There's no safe way to pick this up. This is categorically heavier than that.
Yeah, it's not just more awkward, is it?
This is the weapon. So that is the head, which, bearing in mind that this is made out of the offcuts from the clamshell, from the cake tin, all of those corner pieces that we cut off to make it, that's 4 of those welded together in layers, so that it has, I think, 2 at this side, 2 at this side, or 2 in the main body, 4 at the back, and then we added some extra bits on the tips to make them a little bit stronger. So they are, well, they should be 12 mil realistically. Hey, look, 12.7 mil. Check me out. I can do maths. And these things spun theoretically at 55 miles an hour, and it's terrifying.
I mean, it was terrible. Like, so the only time we powered this thing up at all, it was running on one of its 2 drive motors.
Thanks, Aid's just like, enjoy the hernia there. Like,
Yeah.
yep, working on it.
So we were running on one of 2 drive motors for it.
Yep.
And the one that we had running was like throttle is kind of a lie in RC land. It's like some PWM duty cycle, and how it corresponds to torque or RPM is a whole barrel of
absolutely,
fun.
David. It is both lethal, and at some point we need to make it work.
Well, that's actually why I have it.
Yeah.
Like, I picked it up from Vibs, who's the teammate whose house we built it at, specifically with the intention of bringing it to the workshop at my new house. I've just recently moved, which is part of why I've been away for so long. I now have room to store and work on. You having fun there, mate?
No, not even remotely.
Is it actually stable there? Ish?
We'll
give it a minute.
It's got it's got 2 legs on it, so I'm going to say yes.
So, yeah, so we ran it on one of 2 motors at 10%, like,
it was
throttle. 5%.
Yeah, it was
okay.
5% power.
And now, in fairness, this was made more terrifying by the fact that I was holding the control electronics.
I've got the video here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll just get the video up, because that's probably the better. Is that just going to be on there, or are we going to actually like fill the stream with it?
Yeah, that is the.
Just like loop it a couple of times, just in case.
It will just keep.
Oh,
looping,
cool.
I think. So yeah, so that is it running on one motor on some homemade bearing carriers that we milled with this cheap little desktop mill that I bought on eBay for 400 quid or something. And it makes such a racket. It is unreal.
Oh god, it's so loud. Although to be fair, that one was especially loud because this is using the first set of bearings that we made, and that set of bearings had been installed or nearby for all the cutting, all the grinding, all the welding that we'd been doing. So the bearings were actually just kind of covered in shit, and that ring was also kind of hanging. So the other ring that we've got on the floor, the first one that we showed you without any heads on it, is a lot cleaner.
So I think the one that's got the weapon on actually hasn't rusted. The old one, the unused one,
because this one
covered in mill scale and rust and all sorts. This is actually done extremely well. I would be happy to run this one.
The mill scale on this is from the mill. That's clean because we went over it with a wire wheel for ages.
Yeah, we did. But yeah, just.
So yeah, I'm going to bring it home. I'm going to put it in my workshop. I'm going to break my back multiple times, moving it around and working on it. And yeah, I'm hoping get it running, get it working. Oh, one other really goofy thing. This was obviously due to go into the arena. By the time,
so this was the other thing.
Yeah, by the time
at one point you were you were in Southampton.
Yeah.
You came up to Reading on the night before because we were going to travel up the day before filming.
Oh, I like this bit.
So you came up here. And
right, Facebook's just kind of gone on a wander.
Yeah, so Chris came up here. He was still writing the control software on the platform on the train with a bunch of wires and electronics hanging out of his bag.
Yeah.
Not looking suspicious at all.
And like the wires and electronics, it's made worse by the fact that the electronics were powered by, everything was actually driven by the big traction batteries that the robot uses. These are like 50 volt, like 13 or 14 cell lithium batteries that we robbed out of some, because these were a big thing at the time, robbed out of some hoverboards, which is the same place we got the motors and wheels that actually drive the robot. So yeah, I was sat there on a train station with these like blue heat shrinked batteries in front of me, just like dangling down into a backpack, with like tethered like onto an Arduino, tethered into my laptop. And yeah, have we got some interior video? This is just from today.
Right now, yeah.
Oh, it's struggling to play a little bit.
It is really struggling to actually pull down the video. I don't know why.
We'll give that a minute. Maybe just pop it on loop and let it figure itself out over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is it actually in the back of my car at the minute. So.
But yeah, so you came up here.
Yeah.
Then we had everything loaded in a trailer in behind my old A6, ready to go, and then
Is it in a trailer?
I think that was the plan at one point.
Oh right, okay.
I think we loaded it into the car after, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time.
I mean, it's been 8 years.
Bearing
So,
in mind,
yeah.
I didn't make it. I threw my back out that morning, so I took some tramadol to try and help it. Didn't help at all. Decided, well, I'm going to have to start taking the gabapentin in order to long term try and reduce the pain. And they don't react well. So I tripped all the way from here to my folks, which is in the northeast.
You were literally seeing double, if I remember right.
You had to drive. We had to emergency insure him on my car to drive it to my folks' place in Sunderland. Then you drove it up to Glasgow because I was still completely out of it the following morning.
Oh, dude, you were zoinked for days.
Oh, it was it was a mess. And then eventually we got up there, and the guys continued building the rest of the robot, and everybody looking at it like, oh my god, what is that thing? Just it's an absolute menace.
Yeah.
Of a robot. And then when you got there, you can take over because you remember it.
Yeah, so when we got there, all the usual things happen. Like we walk into the set, they give us a hand bringing the robot in because, of course, really, really heavy. And then they're like, okay, cool. Well, like when will you be ready for tech inspection? Here are the heats that you're expected to be going to. Here are the robots you're going to be fighting. Blah 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 blah. We're like, awesome. I don't know when we're going to be ready for tech inspection because we don't actually work. At the minute, at that point, we had...
You can do all of your tech inspection you want, so long as you don't need to see anything move.
Yeah, as long as you don't... as long as the robot doesn't have to function,
yes,
you can tech it.
You can at least get through that part.
If I remember right, we couldn't move, we couldn't turn, we couldn't activate the weapon.
Correct.
And I think the only thing that was actually fully working at that point was the kill switch, but it couldn't really work because there was nothing for it to kill.
Yeah.
But it was actually in. So I spent probably the first day and a half of what was supposed to be like setup and filming day, still programming this thing. Yeah. Because up until this point, I'd mostly been building, and I had to
They pushed us into the latest round of heats.
They did us so many favors.
They were like, we'll give you every possible chance. Yeah. Fortunately, they had other people who could sub in if we weren't going to make it. So they weren't going to be inconvenienced, but they moved us as late as possible to try and get it to work.
It finally ended for us, I think, a day after the original deadline for tech inspection, which was itself like a day after we arrived. Like it had been a long time overall.
They did tech for everybody at once. There was just a tech window, so no matter what heat you were in, and then if there are problems, they can push you back, which they did. So
they'd already made a bunch of allowances for us. They'd already delayed our tech inspection. We were already a day overdue, and I was trying to build some cooling. So one of the things that you have to do when you're driving these motors in particular, these are hoverboard wheels and hoverboard motors.
Hoverboards.
And to drive them, we couldn't use the original hoverboard controllers because it was like fully integrated with like the motion platform from the devices we stole them from. So we got some cheap Chinese motor controllers that we didn't know how to use. We didn't know how they work. We don't know how motors work at this point. We barely know how like switching components work and everything. So we bought these.
We are the amateurist of amateurs.
God, yeah. So we bought these motor controllers. Like on the back of them, there's 6 big switching transistors, and under the hood, what they're doing is they're taking battery voltage and connecting battery voltage across different parts of the motor, one after another, to control the rotation. And it turns out that on these big switching transistors, I'm seeing like big metal tabs, and I'm like, awesome, metal tabs, perfect for pulling heat out of these transistors because they're going to get warm. They're switching quite a bit of power. Yeah. So I'll screw like a piece of aluminium or some like spare steel or something that we had to them. The problem is, as I discovered, these tabs are part of the electrical circuit. So when the transistor like switched on to allow electricity through, that thing, I can't remember if it became ground or if it became live or what, but the heat sink became a dead short. So we immediately blew one up.
Yep.
And unfortunately, at this point,
we'd already blown one and another one up beforehand.
Yeah, we'd hurt one during build, like back home in Southampton where we were constructing the thing, and it was probably me that did that as well. So we had no spares at this point. We ordered 5 for the 4 that we needed, and while we were up due to obviously so overdue for filming already, I cooked one of the 4. And at that point, we're done. Like, you can't drive one of these things on 3 motors. There are some robots that you could get away with it, but because we have tank steer, you need, like, all of your motors have to be running to generate enough, like, steering torque, enough traction to rotate the thing.
Yep.
And that was the point where we packed it in. Everyone around us, every other team, as far as I remember, said, we've got these motor controllers. Would this be any good for you? Would this sort you out? We've got this battery that you can use that will be compatible with this thing.
Everybody was trying to make it work.
And I think one of the teams did actually have motor controllers that would work for us. But whether they did or not, we basically said, no, this is it. Like, we've taken the piss enough. There was another robot, like 2 tables over. It was like a dad and his 2 kids or something that had a robot running ready to go. And I think we just went, no, we'll just let them have this shot.
Yeah,
like, they've been sat there watching us fail all this time. And it was
and
at
I
that
can't
point
remember how they did.
I can't even remember who they were.
No.
Which is really bad, because I'm
really
like,
bad.
oh, no, it's on the RobotWars wiki. It says who we were replaced by. They actually did really well. I think they won the heat.
Oh, really?
I don't know how they did overall, but I think they won the heat. So, yeah, that was probably the right thing to do. And yeah, we put it back in its box, and we went home.
And we went,
and
we will be ready for Season 2 when they announce Season 2.
Yeah, because
Season 2 came round, and because they actually filmed Season 2 really soon after they were both within the same calendar year. And there was so much stuff with work that we just weren't anywhere between them going, cool, we're going to do the thing. We're like, we've got maybe a week at most that we could, and it was so much more than that. There was no way we'd have got that.
Yeah, and the part that I find quite weird, I'm not entirely sure how this came about. We spent, because obviously you weren't on the journey home.
Yes.
Right. But me and Vibs, one of the team members, basically spent the entire rest of our stay in Glasgow, then most of the trip back, and then a whole bunch of time afterward, figuring out, okay, well, like, what went wrong? How can we fix it? How can we, like, not repeat this next time? And what do we have to learn, and what do we have to make and buy and all this to make it work next time? Because we were 100% sure, like, we've got most of a robot, we've spent all the money, we've got the batteries, got the chargers, spent a ton of money on, like, metal, and all these other bits. We're like,
oh, they're so very generous.
Who's that?
There's the RobotWars wiki.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, they are very, very generous in their description of us. But we did all of that, and we actually worked out what we had to do, and then we just kind of didn't do it. We didn't buy the new controllers that we needed. We didn't write any of the new software that we needed. We didn't build any of the new cooling systems or anything that we needed. And it just sort of fizzled out. And I know part of it is because 6 months later I moved away. Right, at the time I lived in Southampton, and it was late that year that I moved here to start PedalBOX with Aid, oddly enough. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why we never went back to it.
Armakillo and Doomba withdrew from Heat C on set, the latter due to faults with its motor controllers. And there is a reference that then goes to a Facebook page post, which is deleted. Which is weird, because it's on my page, and I haven't deleted anything that I'm aware of.
So if you go to there is a page for Doomba on the RobotWars wiki. I'm not sure if it will actually let the link send, but I've just tried to send a link into YouTube chat. And we were replaced by TR2.
Withdrew, yes, with the eventual Heat winner. Yeah. So, like, I'm more than happy that somebody else, like, our position won.
Yeah.
That's about as good as we can get.
Oh, there we go. TR2 lost only a single battle in its campaign to the eventual champion Apollo. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best that we let them sub in and take our place, because I honestly, I've got a sneaky feeling that the first time we took a hit from something, one, either the bolts holding the armour to the chassis would have snapped, or two, the attachment holding the weapon drive motor to the weapon would have failed, and the weapon drive motor would have, like, dropped into the chassis, or three, we'd have knocked an electrical connection loose.
Yep.
And just been all of the above.
Yeah. 105 kilos. They are a pneumatic flipper. The defences, they are hardened steel. Our defences, we never got in the ring.
Our defences, like, I think we were counting very much on, if anything gets near enough us to hit us, it's already dead. Like, standard flipper.
Oh, Johnny was in it as well.
Yeah, Johnny was meant to be the driver.
Yes, he was.
Oh, Johnny's driven loads of RC cars before. We'll let him drive.
Yes. Weapons, rim spinner. Yep. It would have been It would have been nice to see it going, and yeah, at some point we do need to get it working again.
One of my favourite contributions.
I mean,
of Johnny's,
yes,
he drove all the way from Glasgow back to Southampton non-stop apart from fuel.
I bet. I've done that drive.
Yeah,
it's not fun.
What's Glasgow?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
To here at least, which it's another hour on after that.
What?
Yes. You do it regularly, I know.
But like, I was exhausted. I conked out like not even a third of the way into the drive, and Johnny just like off on he goes.
I've done it in Jess's car, and you don't even need to stop for fuel.
Yeah, yeah. The A6 would do it absolutely fine.
Yeah. Qualified to compete in Series 8.
Yeah.
However, after it was we didn't enter Series 9.
So that is what we did before we started pedal. And then we went, wow, I mean, we welded a robot. How bad can our welds really be? Forgetting that we welded a robot that was never tested. It was never put through any pace whatsoever.
The bit that I always find a little bit sad is when someone said, oh, were you on the show? I'm like, and my answer is, I usually just go with no. Like, no is the actual honest answer. But if I feel like being funny, it's like, well, technically you can actually see me hunched over it in the pits in the background of a few shots, trying desperately to get it working.
And you can see Vibs in one of the crowd shots because they still got to watch while they were up there. Wow, my hands are filthy after touching that.
Nice.
But yeah, so so that's what we did before, and what we've been doing since is obviously building a car, and we really need to get around to finishing it.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing the engine run.
Yeah.
I think I've been saying that for 3 years. But...
So as Chris says, he has moved house recently, which basically nuked the first 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
Christmas was obviously before that, which was pretty much destroying everything through that. The rest of the time between basically the beginning of December and now, whenever I've been here and able to work on my own, it has either been pouring rain and, you know, like 8, 9, 10, 11 or more degrees Celsius, so not terrible, but wet. Or it's basically freezing, but really nice and sunny, and there is nothing fun about doing anything on that car with completely numb hands. So for the most part, I have stayed inside and I have been playing with a 3D printer. So you've seen that we've been doing a lot of printing beforehand, and we were using your Ender 5 for quite a few things way
using
back.
my 5 Plus, which let us do big things like the fan cowling.
Which is up there, which I'm not going to try and get. You can actually see it on stream just behind all these cups, though. So we made that and then abandoned the idea of the fan cowling and just put more radiators, more fans on the radiator than that would have worked anyway. So that was kind of irrelevant.
I think the big thing that's changed since I was 3D printing stuff is like I've moved away a couple of years ago, but you now have a 3D printer on site, and you have discovered the joy of FreeCAD.
Well, yeah. So we had an Ender 3 here for a long time, and it was always just a little bit fiddly. Sometimes it would work. In fact, that's a lie. It was absolutely glorious.
It was a solid printer. I think it's the print volume.
It would print lots and lots of stuff, and we printed all sorts of things. It was an Ender V2, as Vic says. We printed loads of stuff, but as soon as we needed to print something for the car, it would inevitably fail, and we never worked out what it was about my files that it really didn't like.
I think a big part of it is you were making all your stuff in SketchUp.
No, this is even after I went.
Okay.
I was also making it in SketchUp, and SketchUp is, in fairness, terrible. But it took me a long, long time to move from one to the other.
I'll compromise on that. SketchUp isn't terrible. It's terrible
for 3D modeling.
CAD.
Yes, sorry, for CAD. It is not a CAD modeler. It's good for some things, but it is definitely not a CAD modeling anything. No.
Sorry, we're being offered safety devices for the for Doomba's ring weapon.
They won't. I know they won't because I can see them out the corner of my eyes if they try. One isn't going to help you either. I'm being offered a shoe to try and put on one of the weapons because there is a deep-seated fear that a cat
will
is
like
going to land on
into it and impale itself.
Would be tough.
I mean,
That's
the cats
not
are
wood.
stupid,
that was the wall. That was very much brick. There is wood next to you, though.
Touch wood. Are we?
Yeah.
There we go.
So, eventually, having tried this Ender 3 for a few bits, we decided that there was just something wrong. So I enlisted help from Jess, who is currently our producer in the corner, and it was absolutely fine on hers. But we still couldn't work out what was wrong with the other one. So we got lots and lots of stuff printed at Jess's on their printer, absolutely fine. And then they decided they were going to get a Bamboo Labs. And
is it an X1?
No,
something else?
P1S.
P1, sorry, yeah.
With the multicolor AMS,
P1S with all the trimmings.
which is how I ended up with this that Sparky made for me, who's currently in chat, I think, which is absolutely glorious. So we have one on the studio door, we have another one upstairs by my computer, and then this one that lives in here, which I need to stick somewhere, but I mean, like, feels a bit much, but I mean, it does do the job. Get rid of that sticker then. So I found this and went, ooh, I like that a lot. And started modelling more and more things and actually making the transition over to FreeCAD instead of SketchUp in order to make things properly without a lot of the problems I was having trying to do it in SketchUp. And I've basically spent the last 3 months just doing that, not least making...
It's often said that when you have a 3D printer,
Yes.
every like it's a hammer which, when wielded, every problem looks like a nail.
It is.
Yeah.
Like that
And I think that effect finally bit
yes,
you.
That got me so much. Like, it is my hammer and every problem is a nail. So we now have new additional merch. These little key rings, which will be for sale very, very soon on shop.pedalbox.show. And they're all 3D printed. I was contemplating putting the resin in, but I quite like the tactile feel of not having the resin, like actually having the print on. I've been testing a couple of the prototypes for about 2 months now on various sets of keys between me and my parents, and I'm pretty happy. Like, I wasn't sure if the plastic was going to come off, getting beaten around. So yeah, these will be for sale soon.
Go on.
There you go. These are literally only finished printing this afternoon, which is why we haven't...
Oh, is that what the big
yes,
print that
that's
went
what
on
the
this
big
morning
print
was?
was doing
Okay.
that was going... So yes, this is why he doesn't have one. I took the one off my keyring to give to my parents, one that wasn't actually a horrible green prototype.
Coming soon to the PedalBOX store for how much money?
I haven't worked that out yet.
Yeah. About 5 pence worth of filament and a whole ton of print time and power.
It's worse than that because of the amount it has to spit out to go between
you've got to
each
purge
layer.
the nozzle between every colour, yeah.
So if you're only doing one,
it's
about a 15% efficiency on the colour, on the colours. The black is like, it prints all of the black and then does the colours. But on the colour layers, from that backing up, it's about a 15% efficiency.
What, 85% of it's discarded?
85% of it is dumped. Obviously, when you're doing a nice big batch of them, it's better than that. So, but it's, like, for the... I think it is about 6 or 7 grams of colour filament that sits on the backing.
I think the
of
bigger
these.
cost of it's going to be because, like, you're running the bed warmer and all that sort of stuff. I bet that actually most of the cost of these is electric.
Probably. So it's the P1S
with all of the Gubbins' multi-extrusion stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
I need to work out how it actually does the multi-extrusion. Is it like 4 filament paths all into one hot end?
It runs 4 filaments down and then it winds it back out and puts the new one in.
Oh, so it's a bit like
and then winds it back and puts the next one in as.
Is it a bit like the? I can't remember. The MMU, I think, is it called for?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. It's like the Prusa MMU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly that.
Buffer,
Yeah.
Filaments go into filament buffer and then one from there into the
Nice.
and then just pulls it back in.
So yes, so having got better, I ended up making that. But I mean, this is a finished article here. This is the fuse panel cover, which we have to make in 2 pieces because the bed is smaller than we need the panel size for. And it has a couple of nice little clips that go on the back. And eventually this will all be glued together in one unit. But it holds pretty well, just like that. To get to this point, the number of prints we had to do was absolutely phenomenal.
Have you got like all the failures done?
I have all of the intermediate bit. Like,
'cause you're
the
figuring
print
out the
quality on
dimensions,
some of it's not like it doesn't matter. It's the thinnest possible print that we could do. So this was off by quite some distance. So I tweaked it.
The big challenge here is basically like none of the car is in CAD, and none of it ever will be. Like very early on, when all we had was like the outermost, barest parts of the chassis, I tried measuring it and putting it in CAD. And even then, it was just too daunting. There were too many inconsistencies between one bit and another. And when you're CAD modeling, you're usually assuming that a piece of metal is straight. That is not a safe assumption with that chassis.
You would also assume that a 90-degree corner is actually 90 degrees as well.
Yeah.
And we would assume when we were making it that a lot of things were coming out at 90 degrees, and they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, except for when you need to assume that it's actually 90 degrees,
So
or
when
work out that it's like 92, which is really
so when
annoying.
so when we started measuring up bits of the car to make 3D prints of, like you're measuring really odd shapes, and you're trying to figure out like odd curves, because nothing is like carved out on a CNC machine, nothing's a continuous radius.
Well, for this, we made a map. We made a map
Yeah,
of
and we,
all
like,
of the
measured-
points, and we triangulated between every single point that we could possibly measure on it to get accurate references. And they all tied up in CAD to fit exactly what we measured, to within sort of tenths of a millimetre, you know. It was fine. And then I printed these two pieces to those measurements, and it was garbage. It was off. It was off by miles in so many different ways, because we'd assumed things were 90 degrees when they clearly weren't.
Well, in fairness, that wasn't us assuming 90 degrees, because that's what the measurements would tell us. It's bad measurements.
Yes,
Because again,
well,
you're
well.
in a car, and like you're contorting yourselves all shapes,
But
and
when
you don't even have like ground truth points.
But when I was
to measure.
correcting for, oh, it's just a tiny bit out, my assumption was that it was 90 degrees,
right,
which it
right.
clearly wasn't. So then we made these two, and I'll be brutally honest, these look very, very familiar. Sorry, very similar to one another, except that they absolutely aren't. They are... the problem is it's very difficult to tell, because it's black thing on black.
Yeah. And to be fair, like the point
Yeah.
is that it was a very iterative process.
Many,
Like, that's the
many
kind of thing
iterations.
yeah.
And this was a fairly simple piece. This is a flat piece with a very small lift on it, a very small...
lip.
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. And that one was fine. When it came to doing what eventually turned into this is our switch holder. Now, if you've watched all of the videos, you will have seen me attempt to cut that out of a piece of metal on 4 separate occasions and fail 4 separate times, at which point we decided that we'd just print the damn thing. So this is what we've ended up with. Now, obviously, there is a front plate to go over this, but I didn't want to waste all the material because I just needed to make sure that this would actually fit into the gap. And this actually does. But it has a holder in here for the
Side
wing
mirrors,
mirror
side mirror
switches.
controls, yeah.
But that uses the original clips, so that all just fits in really nicely and works. So massive win there. Similarly, if I can get this back out, because this is a snug fit. The original light switch goes in through a hole, and that is all carved and modelled so that when it goes through, it locks into place.
If it goes through.
If it goes through, because this is actually, I measured this
It
twice.
looks like an interference fit, yeah.
It's worse than. It's slightly under interference fit once it gets right up to the front there. But when you release the factory clips, it actually locks in place using the factory clips on the back of the switch, so it doesn't move around. At least, yeah, it does. So that's what we ended up with. To get to that point, we have 2 different failed sizings, which again, they look almost identical, but I assure you they're not. Because that wouldn't fit on my bed in one piece, I then have a 2-piece print, which again was completely wrong, followed by another one which did fit because it was just the inner size. And eventually we then got to a test print which was the wrong size, but this didn't have a lot of the work to actually hold the piece in. So there are so many iterations that I've gone through on this.
I do love that it just sucked. Whatever we like, however we made it, it was just a nightmare.
It was just awful.
Like, it was 4 failed attempts.
It was 4 failed attempts at making just making the shape, and then making the shape again in plastic, where we can absolutely categorically print to exactly the size that we measured. Still failed 4 times.
Yeah.
Well, 5, because I had to make another one for this anyway, and now there's a couple of changes off this one to fit again. So that's the old surround from that bit.
And I think kind of the useful part of this is like when we were making it in metal, it was tying up workshop time
Yes.
in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when we were making these things in metal, it was taking up time that we could have been building suspension,
Yeah.
we could have been building bodywork,
Yeah.
we could have been doing any number of other things on the car. The 3D printing, like the prints take a long time to
Yeah.
run, but that's kind
It's
of
weather
fine.
independent.
Yeah,
Which is
and
the
like
beauty
it can
of
run
it.
overnight. It
Yeah.
can run inside while we're working in the day.
You can come and
you
do-
can model it in the evenings, which
Yeah.
is otherwise dead time.
You can realistically do 2 good iterations every day if you were really pushing it, because you can take the part out, measure it in the morning, change a few things, set it to print, go and work on the car, come in from the car, take the print off last thing, check it, see if it doesn't work. If it doesn't, make some changes, print another one overnight, and continue it round.
Yeah.
Not that we were anywhere near that efficient.
No, God, there were a couple of things.
There was
we
a
were
couple of
managing
times that
yeah,
it did, but
mostly
I definitely wasn't making stuff. And then we also, this was one of the failed SketchUp attempts, which was made a lot bigger than this. This holds the air filter in, which, haha, I have the air filter here. So this goes on like that and holds the air filter in line with the rear suspension stay from the cage. So it
Yeah, so you've got
holds
these
it
big down tubes down the back of the
just
car.
like that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, I made this significantly wider so that it would have a lot more purchase, because this is actually fairly heavy, although it's supported at both ends because it's mounted to the roof scoop and it's mounted to the engine. Like, it's still fairly heavy, and with it being attached to the engine, even with all of this rubber in, it's going to vibrate and move around. So it needs a reasonable amount of surface area to hold it in place. And I made this and then extended it again in SketchUp, which is why it's not a curve at all. This is kind of what happens when you ask SketchUp to make you a circle. It doesn't understand, and it just approximates it, and when you export that into the 3D model, into the STL, it just goes, oh, the not circle thing? Yeah, cool, that's not a circle.
I do like how the light plays off it, though. It's like
It
old
looks-
school
yeah.
video game shading, like flat shading.
It's very pixelated, very not pixelated. Yeah, low poly. And that worked for a given value. Like, it fit, it held it in the right place, and it was an absolutely perfect reference to make a better one from. So, over Christmas, I made a new one. Unfortunately, despite the fact that I had a perfect reference piece right here, I managed to get the chirality completely backwards. So instead
There's
of
a
this,
word.
what, chirality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about chirality a lot this morning. I think it's just like
It's
stuck
just
in the
it's
brain,
sunk
isn't
in,
it?
yeah. So
You mirrored
instead of this holding, if I hold the roll cage tube level like that, you can see it is holding the filter down at a downward angle across there. Now, if I just remove that, you will notice that when I put this into this one and hold it level, it holds the filter at an upward angle. So, yeah, I managed to screw that up especially badly, which is not that helpful. Fortunately, in all of these 3D printing things, you can just go, my model was perfect. Just make it the other way around. So we now have...
I
take
do
this
think
bolt out of here
you're
as
going to
well.
want to reinforce this by webbing
Yeah.
across here and here, because at the minute you've got like all of the load supporting this is through this like relatively small
Yes.
join in here.
I also can't get this bolt out, which is
Okay.
going to annoy me. But yeah, we now have a nice
On-brand.
PedalBOX orange filter holder, which actually holds it in the correct way, which is going to look great when we eventually get round to installing it. And I think we're probably going to end up doing an entire episode where all we do is install 3D printed parts onto the car. Because there's not going to be very much fabrication to do, because the fabrication is all done. There's not going to be very much work to do, hopefully, as long as we've got them all right. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very much, you wouldn't download a car. Well, you can if all of these parts would actually work for you for some reason. I don't know why
So-
they would.
You wouldn't download a car, like somewhat of a tangent, came up in one of the Discords I'm in this morning, I can't remember which one, I think it might have been Stratlan. Someone said, you wouldn't download a car. And I'm like, I did in 2014. I downloaded a Le Mans prototype,
Yes.
a Class 1 Le Mans prototype, because there was a team Perrin something or other.
Yeah.
founded by someone or other Perrin. It was named after the founder, and it was genuinely an open source LMP1 car that he wanted the internet to design him a race car, which, let's be fair, it's a bit bold. The sort of people who can design LMP1 cars typically get paid for it, and he then wanted to compete in it. It didn't actually happen, but yes, I absolutely would and did download a car. Had no idea what to do with it. It was big bill of materials, or CAD models, bunch of aerodynamic simulations and stuff that I had no idea at all how to actually make use of. I didn't even know how to read most of this stuff. Like, I couldn't open most of the files. But yeah, it is absolutely a thing that, for at least a short while, you could do.
Yeah, as Aid says, yes, we could have just bent up some metal and made it work. But again, it comes back to, it was very thin material if we needed to weld anything, which was annoying. It was another thing that would have needed to be outside in the garage. And when the first time we made this, I'm pretty sure it was also winter, so we were like, oh, we can offload that into the evening.
Yeah, we can punt it into the evenings and nights.
So along with the other pieces of interior, we now have yet more parts. This is for the hazard relay switch, which sits in quite nicely.
Is that also the fan rotary goes under that?
Yes. The only downside with this, it does lock in really, really nicely, but the only way to remove it...
It leaves the clips behind.
It leaves the clips behind, but fortunately the clips are extremely easy to fit back in, and doing it any other way would have been more annoying to deal with, so I just deal with ejecting the clips directly off. And all that does... There's a couple of little tabs in the side there. So theoretically, you could actually just push the clips in if you wanted to, but because the clips eject and get reinserted into this unit so easily, it's just easier to just push it straight back out. So that was
a good snap.
That was very loud.
Yeah.
So that fits nicely in there, and the button is nice and easy to hit. There are, as you'll notice on the back of here, some adjustments noted. Because of where we've got the padding, we actually need less faceplate on this, so we need to lose this side, and we need to make the whole thing a little bit shorter, which I have already done in the CAD. I just haven't printed a new one yet, so that's all done. And eventually, when I find where the rotary switch is for our controller, for the fan controller, that pokes through, and as you can see, that does not stick through enough in order to get a washer on and a clip and everything else. So I've also recessed out the back so it fits better, because we didn't have this blower switch when I actually made this originally. So yeah. And then finally, the last two bits.
This is a really goofy little one.
We installed this horn, and we bought a horn for a 55mm steering wheel. And we have a steering wheel that has a 55mm hole. And after putting it in, we discovered that neither of those things are correct, because it matters a lot more than we thought how thick the steering wheel is. There is yes, it's a 55mm hole for a 55mm boss,
material,
but the depth is completely unknown. They don't have any concept of how thick the material for your steering wheel is. Maybe they do now, and I just have a very old steering wheel. That's entirely possible. But one way or another, I had to print this tiny little boss that goes on the back here and interlocks with it so it actually fits. And now our horn does not rattle around in the steering wheel. And the final one we were going to fit today, and then we decided it would be better to show them off on camera tonight, is these, which you quite like these.
Yeah, these are I think these are probably one of the most complex bits of geometry you've done so far. I remember helping you out with this before Christmas, so these have been waiting a little while. And these, I think you're probably going to have to show it quite close to the camera. The focus will be screwed, won't it? So these are guides for the handbrake cables. So with the handbrake cables, but on the car, the handbrake cables come up forward along the trailing arm, in across like the rear firewall, the bulkhead behind the seats, and then they bend into the centre tunnel and go into like a little balancer just behind the handbrake. And where they come round that corner into the tunnel, the sort of dimensions of the factory cable, at that point, there's no reinforcement, there's no holding brackets or anything. It's just like the inner clear Bowden tube.
Further along, it has a nice big rubber cover on it, so that it's protected going through the last bit of the chassis, going down the arm itself. So it's nice and encased. But because the part that we need to protect is so deep in the original car, because these are just Audi TT handbrake cables.
Yeah, these are completely stock.
Yeah, they sit underneath the rear seats, and they are basically directly in line. So they have no bending force on them. They are basically fine where they are.
Yeah.
But because of where we're putting them, we need them to take this awkward turn.
Yeah, so like we're pulling this sleeve for the handbrake cable around a sharp corner, like and it is a genuine sharp corner right around a piece of box section.
Yeah.
And already just in a little bit of testing that we've done, we can see the Bowden degrading.
Yeah.
It's like the steel wire running through inside, where it's rammed up against the Bowden in that corner is wearing it pretty badly. So we've made these, and the idea is we run the entire Bowden through this outer radius, bolt this onto the back of the body, and then our handbrake cable can come in across the rear firewall, and then it's redirected neatly forward, and it spreads all of that load on the Bowden along that entire inner edge. It will still wear, just nothing like as fast as...
It will survive a lot better than if we had it beforehand. And you probably even... I think we'd struggle to get the handbrake in adjustment. With the potential stretch and wear through it and keep it in adjustment without even something like this. If we need to, we can make bigger ones of these as well. We can make the radius larger.
Yeah, so that was another problem we were wrestling with. Where the Bowden came around that corner, what we found is that you couldn't preload the Bowden to be like straight lines everywhere. And all that happened, whenever you pulled the cable, you didn't so much pull the cable inside the Bowden, you just pulled the whole Bowden straight.
Yeah.
And actually the first good bit of travel on the handbrake lever did nothing to the actual handbrake.
Yeah.
You were just taking up slack.
Yeah.
Not even of the cable itself, but of the cable's sheath.
So this should resolve a lot of that by keeping it in line and stopping it trying to pull up against the firewall as it tightens. It should actually direct it round. So yeah, hopefully these will be going on tomorrow, and it will be glorious because they'll just work. So with only one of these printed. These are one of the parts that Jess did.
Oh right, okay.
Before we got our own bamboo, so they have been designed once, printed once, and they seem to work.
Okay. Well, fingers
so
crossed.
We'll see whether or not they actually
did we get
work.
it right first time for once? That would be...
It'd be really nice, wouldn't it?
Nice. Yeah.
What a lovely idea that would be.
Wouldn't it just?
But
I mean, to be fair, I have tested. The Bowden does fit through it really nicely. Like
I tested that immediately.
Properly.
So
it's just whether it actually does the job correctly is the unknown.
Yeah, pretty much that. And I am quietly confident that it'll at least be better. It will be better than it was. It might not be perfect. It might not work completely, but it will definitely be better than it was. And hopefully it will be enough for the IVA to be happy.
Yeah. I don't actually know if they're going to look at stuff like this in the IVA, because it's down underneath, inside
the only thing they'll look
car.
at is the efficiency of the handbrake. And,
yes, as long as we can get enough.
Which, if you have too many clicks beforehand, you're not going to get much efficiency after. I mean, a well-adjusted handbrake needs, what, 2-3 clicks pulling it up off the bottom?
I don't know.
And this one was nearly to the limit of the handbrake.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't.
Yeah. Hopefully this buys us that back.
Yeah, all being well, that will be good. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've spent an awful lot of time doing whilst the weather has been terrible outside. Unfortunately, we had enough video kind of stacked up that we could keep things going, and there has been some bits where I haven't actually put videos out for one reason or another because I'm slack or forget.
Yeah, the episodes that we've just finished up filming, we actually do say in them, and this is going to be a good gauge for anyone who's watching this and watches them when they come out. You can actually see how long the pipeline is.
It should be next week.
Oh wow! Okay, so we really have burned the pipeline.
Yes.
So
episode 152 will be out next week, which we finished filming today, and we started filming
in late November or
late
December.
November. Yeah.
So, so all of the time in between then, because I was last here in December, all of the time in between then, all the episodes you've seen are just the buffer. Yeah. One thing I do really like about the way it's turned out, and quite funny, is obviously before Christmas, one of the recent episodes that went out was us getting the windscreen in. That was, 2 or 3 weeks or something ago? Was us putting the windscreen in. And of course, the reason we wanted to put the windscreen in was so that the thing was protected
during
winter,
which it was.
And the episode, well, yeah, it was. We succeeded in that. I just find it quite funny. The episode came out in like February.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, basically that. It's it has taken a bit of time. I've just realised there is probably going to be one other episode, or possibly two, before 152 goes out, because 2 weeks ago, I went to Rostival, up at the British Motor Museum, which
I'm trying to work out why I didn't.
I have no idea.
I'd only just moved 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Potentially, theoretically, just... No, because... maybe?
It was 2 weeks ago, the Wednesday just been.
Yeah,
so if it was 2 weekends ago, I was like 3 days in, yeah.
Yeah. So I went up to Rustle, the first event, which is run by iDriver Classic, Furious Driving, and Hubnut. So they were obviously all there with a selection of cars, and they had 350 spaces in the car park outside the museum, which in the nice sort of curved car park that goes around the main museum, and they filled that within, I think, 2 days of applicants, of people. And it was basically a bring anything you drive, anything that's daily. It doesn't have to be a class. It just bring your car and show it off.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is, everything was welcome, which was really nice. And then they opened up another car park, which was 500, and they sold out of that as well. So there must have been the better part of 800 cars there. By the time you get a few dropouts and whatnot, in the main display, plus everything that was in like the visitor car park at the other end. So it was a really good day. Got around maybe half of it, videoing and just chatting to people. So it's definitely, if you want to see it all, go and do that first. Do the tour around all of the things. I didn't get into the museum or the heritage collection at all across the day. The ticket ends up, if you want it to be, you buy a one-day ticket, but it is also like an annual pass, so come once, come again. So I'm just going to go back and have a proper look around. But it was one of those things, it's just like, there was so much to see. And I got over an hour's worth of video walking around looking at stuff, came back, started to edit it, was about to put it out and decided, no, I need to do a little bit more on this. I need to record some voiceover, but I had my car booked in for some work and to go up and see my folks. Went up there and everything went wrong. I only got back down here yesterday after Rustival, which was the 9th.
How did you get down here, Aid?
So
what mode of transport did you have to take from inside the UK to inside the UK?
I could have taken a train, in fairness, but no, I flew. Mostly because I'm also trying to hack my way through the British Airways tier point system, and it was just convenient to do that before the end of my collection year. But
and why did you have to take not a car, Aid?
Well... So on the 10th, I drove up to go and get the gearbox looked at because I figured it needed a clutch. It's done nearly 230,000 miles in my A6. It's a DSG, so it's an automatic, but it's twin clutch, so it does have a pair of clutches, and they wear. You have to get it sorted and replaced at some point. It's just a matter of life when you have an actual friction-based clutch. So I figured it needed a clutch because it was not so much slipping, but it didn't seem to be engaging properly, and it was very slammy going into gear. It's low speed, first gear. If you've got a little bit of revs on, it'll bang in. And after a while, that seems to have taken out one of the CV joints, which was clanking away as well when you turned around a corner. So we took it up to get the CV joint done. CV joint got fixed, absolutely fine. Still a bit of a knock there, weird, coming from somewhere else. Happened to be back up in the area, got it looked at again, and it was Nick at Decimal Tenths. Go and subscribe to their channel as well. In another tab, don't tab off from this. And I went to pick the car up and he went, it's not a CV joint. Oh, what? Oh no, not an outer, and it's an inner. No, it was the output shaft from the gearbox. There was play, which was not good. But it's fine because the clutch, the gearbox had to come off in order to do the clutch anyway, so it's fine. Just do them all at once. So it went up on the 10th, had it booked in on the 11th. They got the gearbox off, and they discovered a massive crack in the flywheel. or in the retaining pin around the flywheel.
Have you got
Not
pictures of any of
retaining,
this stuff?
yeah, I have. So when I find it again,
Sorry, I'm just kind of leaving this bit to you.
oh no, there we go. I wonder if I can.
Content.
There we go. Can I have it on the aux a moment? And I will explain the horror of all of this.
5, 4, 5.
This is not meant to be like that. This is not meant to be like that at all.
So what exactly is that? Like I
So-
can see that it's some part of the rotating assembly. It looks kind of
So-
flywheely, but
On the engine, there is a plate. So the way the gearbox sits, it's like all good front-wheel drive cars. It is a nightmare to package coming out of a gearbox and driving the front wheels. So there is the back of the engine. There is a plate, and the plate joins into the center of the flywheel on the other side. So this is looking from the back of the engine at the front of the gearbox. And this plate, which you can see here with these bolts going through, mounts onto the face of the flywheel, and it has this big retaining ring here that is press fit into it, and then it has all of these bolts as well.
okay.
So that ring holds the two pieces together, and then the bolts go through, but they all do some of the clamping force effectively. And this is meant to be solid. This is one piece. This is not two separate pieces.
It's not, yeah, it's not like a snap
This is
ring
not a
that's-
snap ring that goes in.
Yeah.
So this
I mean, to be fair, even if it was, it wouldn't look like that. It would have a gap.
so this
but yeah.
developed a crack, and then
You might want to point with your pointer.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
No, we're back to the cap. Sorry, I was a few seconds behind.
So yeah, so this crack in here is big enough that it actually allows the plate on the front of the engine and the flywheel to rotate independently from one another.
Seems bad.
Purely by chance, there was another car in, there was an A5 in, which had exactly the same problem with its flywheel, and the movement between the plate and the flywheel was in excess of 1.5 inches twisting movement.
It's not normally how you
around.
measure angles.
No, I'm trying to work out what it would have been, because it's about that. So it was probably 15 to 20 degrees of movement between the two units, at least.
So I would imagine you get like a lot of sort of kinetic, like hammering.
So it was a
action,
hammer
like
load going
backlash sort
through,
of thing,
which
yeah.
is what I assume killed the CV joint, because the cage was shattered, because obviously it goes around and it's basically just banging the cage into the bearings, and that's what shattered it all apart. So fair enough. That impacting load also unbalanced it and hammered it badly enough that it collapsed the bearings in the differential. So you go, okay, well, differentials can be rebuilt. No, not in that gearbox. Audi do not sell the parts. TPS, like the supplier that deal to all of the networks, they do not sell them because they can't get them from Audi. They can't get them from the OEM that Audi use, because the OEM that Audi used to make the gearbox do not sell those parts separately at all. So, okay, well, it must need a diff then. They also don't sell the diff, and basically, the tech that was working on it, Callum, thanks Callum, he called up TPS, and he said, I nearly fell off my chair when they told me, because they said, oh, you need a whole gearbox, they're 10 grand. And I was not willing to spend 10 grand on a car that cost me 9.
I was going to say, in the nicest possible way, your car is not worth spending 10 grand on.
No, I could have bought another. The cheapest one I could actually find, which admittedly had a similar 200,000 miles on, was 7.5 grand. Which, on the one hand, I'm very pleased with, because my 9 grand car in 5 years
It's been depreciating for a couple of years
has
now,
only depreciated another 1.5 grand in theory. But to get one 110 to 150,000 is about 9.5 grand. So for the price of a gearbox, I could have just bought a lower mileage car, which, on the one hand, probably would have had fewer problems, but is a complete unknown.
Yeah.
So you always have that sunk cost of, but I know this thing, and I know what I've done to it, and I know what the problems are versus buying an unknown.
This is where Sam is with his 3 Series, right?
Exactly.
We've spent so much money and so much time fixing a whole bunch of problems. We're like, oh, well, it's fixed now. Like, those problems are not going to recur.
Yeah.
And anything we go, oh, well, maybe something else is going to go wrong. Maybe we're going to lose an ABS sensor or something. But we're like, okay, well, that applies to any other car
Exactly.
we can
It's
buy.
like, I've ruled out all of these things that mine doesn't need.
And this is one of the things that
which
really, really gets
another
me.
one might. Which,
This is one of the things that really, really gets me with a lot of people. They go, oh, but I've spent so much money repairing it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get rid of it because it's a liability. It's like, well, no, you've spent all that money repairing it. That's now a bunch of things that you know are good.
Yeah.
And
It
won't
is
break
a known
again.
quantity.
Yeah.
So,
And then
yes.
invariably you go and buy another one and you're rolling the dice and all the shit's broken again. You have to repair it again.
Precisely.
Like,
So instead of doing that, I found another one that was, it's the inverse sunk cost fallacy, effectively. So I found another gearbox that was compatible for 2800 with
still a piss take. honestly.
150 something thousand miles less than mine, at least. It's well under 100,000. So it also then doesn't need a clutch pack, so I saved money on that front. Bearing in mind the clutch pack is about £700-800 plus VAT anyway, plus all the fitting and everything else and what have you. So it's still not going to be a cheap fix, but it's part of the fix I was expecting is eaten up in the cost of the gearbox anyway. So it could be worse. It could have needed a flywheel and a gearbox, because clearly it still needs a flywheel, because that cannot go back in.
Yeah.
What I have asked Nick for is the old gearbox. So when it's all done, they're going to put the old gearbox in the boot, so I can bring it down here, blow it all apart, and I'm going to turn the casing, the gearbox case, into a sink for the outside tap, because it's aluminium, so it's not going to rust, and it is a long, tail shaft kind of style gearbox, because they do a quattro version, which obviously has to drive the rear diff. So it will stand up, and I can make a frame for it, and I can just have a nice little sink outside underneath the tap in the back garden, and all it's cost me is $3,500 by the time all of the other stuff is in. What fun!
I do think, if it's possible to disassemble the gearbox...
Oh yeah, you can just blow it apart.
I mean, I suppose it's possible to disassemble anything, I guess. But if you could disassemble it and run through what all the different bits are and how it works, I suspect with the DSG, it's probably slightly trickier than most, because there's kind of
there's a lot of solenoids to do the things.
Yeah, and what is it? You've got two. I can't remember.
There's two independent
two lay
clutches
shafts on the input clutch, and you've got two concentric clutches on the input. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
And I think if you can be bothered, and if it will fit on this table,
it will absolutely fit. I mean, the
you have to put an extra leg.
I was going to say the table won't take it.
Yeah.
The guys were saying, in order to get, because obviously it was on a ramp up above them, to safely get it from above them to on the deck, it was a 6-man lift, because they had to get it down from above head height into cradled and then down and then put down on it. I lifted it up, and it is a good if you were just going to launch it somewhere and you didn't care where it was going, you could lift it with 2 people, but it's not a comfortable lift. It's a good 2-person, realistically a 3.
You say that and I'm like, do they not have a transmission jack? This feels like a thing a shop should have.
That was putting it onto the transmission jack.
Just
getting it out to dislodge it and go and put it on and then lower it. It was a lot. So yeah, I'm going to get it and then dismantle it. I'll probably dismantle it, not in here. We'll do it on a live stream outside, maybe one afternoon, and just blow it apart on the old picnic bench we've got out there. Because otherwise it is going to vomit fluid over here.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
And gearbox oil smells terrible.
Oh, it does. It
and I don't want it in the carpet.
Stuff. And I don't know why. What is it about it? Is it some weird friction modifiers that just reek? Is there some horrible sulfur compounds in there? I do know that sulfur, there's a lot of sulfur in the film strength enhancers that you get in engine oil.
Yep.
And you want that because on stuff like cam lobes, you've got rolling friction of the cam lobe coming over the follower, and because obviously it's trying to because it's a squeezing motion, it pumps the oil out of the interface. So they put all these extra various different compounds in so that there's a thin film that doesn't really get squeezed. It turns it almost into a gooey sort of substance, I think, when it's down at that scale.
Apparently our control panel has just come back to life for absolutely no valid reason whatsoever.
All right.
It's just decided it's alive again. Now that we are an hour and a quarter into the stream, it's like, oh yeah, me? Yeah, totes.
I wonder wonder if there's something like that in
It's
Gear
not
Oil.
supposed to be able to auto-update. Like, updating this stuff is it's a deliberate act that you have to do.
Brief segue into production.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
We said I was going to do a video tour round, and then I took it all apart. So now we've fixed it. We'll actually have to do a proper tour around all of our video setup. But yeah,
To be honest, it's difficult enough getting just yourself round here. To where I think is.
Oh, that's just
there's
only the server.
There's no
around
machinery
there.
left there.
There's
now,
only
is
the
there?
server around the back of there.
Okay.
That's easy enough. But yeah, it just it's an awful smell, and I don't want it in the house. What I am going to do once I've blown it all apart, I'm not putting it back together again, obviously, because I'm using the. I'm going to use the housing casing. That's what the casing was what I was looking for, but housing is the correct word for something else. I'm probably going to take all of the gears and just make them into something. Either join them all together in a pattern and just like tack weld the back so you can't see them and put them here.
I think it'd be really quite fun to mount them on a panel on like little bearings or just like on a bolt.
Just so
and
you
then
can turn them all.
Yeah, just turn all this big like
like let me just turn on the switch.
The masculine urge to just have a bunch of gear wheels just rotating on a panel for no reason.
Yeah, so it could definitely be done. Like even if you just put it on wooden dowels temporarily, just to make them work and interfere. Yeah, but yeah, I was going to say. So that was the other thing. I could.
Who wants a gearbox? Who
make
wants
them
a
into
gear from
something.
a blown up transmission?
We'll just make like a Michelin star haute cuisine like thing. So here is a gear wheel with a gentle sprinkling of Thunderbird rust on the top, and just present it. So yeah, it could easily be a patron reward for like the topmost tier of the patron rewards, of which we have two. One of them's here. Wait,
Doesn't want parts from this car.
that's tough. You're going to get them. It's inevitable.
One of the rare times when it's slightly less weird to say, "I know where you live."
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
We'll have our car parts.
There is also that. I'll just come and post them through the letterbox. Actually, no, I'd post them through and lower them just in case one of the kittens was like, "Oh my god!" Yeah. And plus, they're white. Oh, they're going to be dirty. If I just
So, has a solution to that.
I'll leave it with I'll just wipe it gently in some gear oil before I lower it down onto one of the cat's back.
Aid has a genuine answer for that. GTO.
Embed it in resin, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we did. This is difficult to do because.
Hey, if you try
there they are.
my fake black button does work now.
So I did actually start making, or rather getting somebody else to make for me,
Are these little bits of Thunderbird rust?
Thunderbird in rust.
Nice.
And unfortunately, they have a lot of bubbles through them.
Yeah.
Ooh, excuse me. But that one we sprinkled some rust into it.
Yeah.
So it is very dirty all the way through. Oh, why have I got the hiccups all of a sudden?
Can I scare you?
It's very, very cloudy with a layer of rust across the bottom.
I'll give you a quick scare just to get rid of the hiccups. Repair bill for an Audi A6 gearbox.
I mean, the repair bill for fixing the blower motor was worse, like demonstrably worse.
How?
Because they didn't know where it was. They didn't know what was broken.
I hope you didn't have to pay for this. Is this like a warranty thing?
No.
How much did that cost? Bear in mind, I'm thinking of 10 grand. I don't think I didn't manage to.
It's not as bad as
clear,
that.
but
No.
Right, okay.
So this was my old A6, the 2.7 TDI that we have parts from in the car, and basically at some point it would just eat water from the outside, and it would make the footwell swim, and it would end up an inch deep in water, which then got into the convenience module pack. So the Bluetooth didn't work, the central locking didn't work, a load of the radio stuff didn't work. All sorts of things just broke because it was all in the passenger footwell on that side. And what it turned out was the blower motor housing had a crack in it. So when it got water near it, it would then just it basically forced induction water into the passenger footwell. And they ended up doing... They had to. I took it to a regular garage first. Regular garage looked at it, tried to do things, and absolutely couldn't find anything. Like, oh, we've looked at the seals, the door seals. We can't work out where it is. So they spent a couple of hours looking at it, and then it was basically a case of either the car is written off because this is just going to destroy the electrics somehow, or it has to be fixed. And this is quite a few. This is 2019, so yes, yeah, that'll do it. So Aid's saying his Roadster was trying to be a swimming pool as well. So got to this is 2019, so I hadn't had the car long at that point. I'd only had it about 3 years.
I was going to say, not long is...
Oh, no, sorry, it would have been 2018 because I was at Sky at the time. Yeah, 2018. So I'd had the car 2, maybe 3 years at that point. No, 3 years. So it was still pretty fresh. It was still lowish mileage for its age. It was 10 years old by that point. And it was a case of we either write the car off and get a new one, and it might have the same problem at some point in the future, or spend the money, fix the problem. Because essentially the car was worthless if you didn't fix the problem. So even going, oh, well, I'll just eat it and buy a new one. What am I going to do with the old one? As it turns out, part it out would have been a perfectly reasonable option.
It parted out pretty well, didn't it?
It really did.
Despite being smashed up at that point.
Yeah. So we put it into Audi and basically went, you know this car, find the problem. So we put it into Audi to be fixed, and it was there for 8 weeks.
Jesus.
Partly because they couldn't find out what the problem was, and I actually have a photograph of it somewhere, and it is stripped bare inside. They took the interior back to bare metal, trying to work out and find where the ingress was cut. They'd park it outside for a while and see what happened when they were nothing, because it was being forced in by the blower motor.
Oh, is it only when the car was running and driving that it would...
It would drain out. It would drain out through the drain until it was being forced through by the airflow, and then it would blow in.
Yeah.
So they eventually, after 2 weeks, they found it. I was blissfully happy with this because they gave me a brand new Audi A4 in the meantime to tool around in, and I probably put like 4,000 or 5,000 miles on that car.
You were somewhat paying for the privilege
Very
of
much
having
so,
an
but
A4 to tool around in there.
I think what would have then become an ex-demo car with maybe 1,000 miles had the better part of 10 on it by the time I was finished. Because I had it for 2 months, and I do 3,000-4,000 miles a month at times, depending on what month it is, various things. And they found what the part was. They found it's the blower housing. Oh my god, it has a crack. Blah blah blah. We figured it out. They're on back order. They'll be at least 2 weeks.
Love it.
In the meantime, just continue carrying on driving your car out. I was like, I absolutely will. So tooled around in that, it was fine. They got it in, and the guy called me up. All apologies. I'm so sorry. We can't give you your car back. The part is in. We went to install it, and we noticed that it was cracked and damaged in shipping.
Please tell me it cracked in the same place.
No,
indicating
but
like
it
an
was,
actual design.
No, but it was more. It's been broken in transit.
Yeah.
And they're on a 2 to 3 week back order, so we're going to have to wait another 2 to 3 weeks.
So usually when I think of back order, I think of, oh, there's going to be like another batch, or they're going to like unlock another box of them in some like cold storage warehouse somewhere. I don't usually think of back order as being, if you order one now, it'll be 2 to 3 weeks, and if you order one tomorrow and next week and a month, it will still be the same 2 or 3 week delay. Like,
they were basically they were being plucked from production line, so they were coming out of just-in-time stock. Effectively, they would put a new one on order, get it in, and it would be eaten through, and it was absolutely horrific, the amount of time. And they were so apologetic, but that ended up being the thick end of $4,000 because of not because of parts. Like, the parts are nowhere near that, but the amount of time and labor they had to put in for that, it was absolutely horrendous.
That's awful.
They did also, I'm a little annoyed with them because they put a brand new carpet in, which was really, really annoying. And I'd cut the carpet in order to peel it back to be able to get in without having to take the entire carpet out, just to lift it up underneath the passenger seat. And I think they saw that damage and it's watered a little bit. Oh no, it's got some waterlog in. We'll have to put a new carpet in. So they ordered a new carpet for the car, and I never questioned it and went, where the hell's my carpet? On the flip side, when we stripped the car, I sold it as a nearly brand new carpet because I got that fixed less than 12 months before the car was written off. It's just, you wouldn't credit it, but sure enough. So
good courtesy cars. I've never had one. I've never had a car either with a warranty that I put into a shop and get a courtesy car, or that anything went wrong with that I couldn't fix myself. Like that, and that's not me bragging.
Yeah.
That's just like I drive old shit.
Yeah.
Which is just easy to fix.
A week to 2 weeks after I handed that courtesy car back,
Yeah.
I was obviously on the mailing list for the Audi dealership in Reading at this point. They sent out a customer-wide email saying, from this point on, any customers requiring a courtesy car will be charged a daily fee.
Jesus.
Because I was not charged an additional daily fee for all of the time
I've
that
got to
had
be honest.
that.
By the time you're charging like OEM dealer rates, which
Yeah.
you've got like £7,500 an hour or something for labour,
Oh,
more.
that's 125 to 150 now.
Yeah, it was
Really?
125
Wow.
plus
I mean,
VAT.
I did admit a minute ago to being a bit out the loop, so I'll take that one.
Yeah.
But like by the time you're paying that much money, I'm sorry, they can give you a courtesy car for free.
That's
Like-
brilliant, Em. He's like, oh no, I missed the call that my car's ready. Oh, I guess I'll
What a
just have to
shame.
keep this Alpha
Yeah.
and just have fun. Have fun for the weekend. I certainly
I
will.
handed that car back with 3,000 miles on it. I had it 7
My-
days.
My
That
brother
is-
did pretty well a while ago.
That's a
'cause-
good point. We've not done a stream since I did my American road trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so
Talking
you'll
about
get to that in
handing
a
cars
second.
back with miles on it.
Yeah, you get to that in a second. So still on courtesy cars I'm trying to keep
Yes,
like
yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
topic at a time. So on courtesy cars, my brother a while ago, he was driving, I think this is when he was in an no, this wouldn't have been the TF. My brother had a Toyota GT86 for a
Yes,
while, for
yeah.
a few years. And he had it parked up at work one day, and an articulated lorry was driving around the car park and caught, I think it was like the rear pillar of his car
Yes,
on the
it
the
was.
rear like bumper light bar thing.
It was the
and dragged
it was the safety bar. So you've got the
Yeah.
lights on the back of the truck, and then you've got that big safety crossbar. And as
Yeah.
he went round, that dug in, caught it, and dragged the car away.
Yeah. So the car was in the quite how that wasn't like significant enough body damage. Like because you'd think that was structural. Like it was was the pillar that
if
it
it's
got.
if it's just exterior bodywork.
Oh no,
then,
I'm aware of
yeah.
like if it is just cosmetic
But you
bodywork,
would-
it's obviously not a
it's
write-off. But it was
how
the
you
pillar.
Yeah.
And I always thought that pillars were such a heavily integrated like unit of metal that there wasn't really a single cosmetic skin that you could just take off and put on. In any
Yeah.
case, the car never handled right afterwards, so I'm probably correct to
Well,
say
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Anyway, but like, so that thing was in the shop, and his insurance company basically made a deal with the shop, said, look, well, it wasn't Sam's fault,
Yeah.
so someone else's insurance is paying for this. How nice of a courtesy car can we give him? So this is in like 2020. No,
no,
it
it
must
was
be. It must be
pre-COVID.
2019 because
Yeah.
it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So 2019, and Sam got a brand new plus or minus some like dealer miles or whatever. It was an F20 or a G something
Yeah.
BMW 3 Series. What a machine that was! That was a very, very nice car. I'm still not like. I don't like where BMW have gone since then. God, it's been 5 years
Yeah.
since
Honestly,
then.
the F10 era M5, in my opinion, is the true successor to the E39. We ignore the E60 in the middle. The styling of the E39 M5 is absolutely perfect.
Are you thinking E90?
You couldn't. No, because that's the 3 Series. Is the E90. The E46 was replaced
Yeah, sorry,
by the
yeah,
E90.
yeah, sorry, I'm getting them wrong around in my head. Yeah,
the E39.
Sorry, because we have both in the family,
yeah.
and I've like
The E39 M5 was absolute peak styling for that, and
Yeah.
then the E60 went all kinds of sideways.
it took them a while to like figure it back out
Yeah.
again because like they
And-
went round, they went
Yeah.
smooth,
And
and then
then-
they didn't really know how to do it for a while.
And then the F10, which again, Aids just said the Z4, yeah. The F10 is the same era as his Z4. And just, oh God, that
Yeah.
thing's glorious.
And yeah, that 3 Series Sam had, it was only a 2-litre, obviously boosted to the moon because
Yeah.
that's how cars are now. But yeah, heavily turbocharged 2-litre, like 8 or 9-speed transmission or whatever it was that they were using
Yeah.
in them.
Should be the 9s in that, I think.
I'm
The 9-speed
not
ZF?
sure. Not sure.
Oh no, it might be an 8 actually.
No, because the 8 is actually an 8-speed. There
Yeah.
was a 9, but it became a 10-speed when they figured out that there was actually another ratio hidden in it if you set a different bunch of solenoids. Or that might be the Ford 9 and 10 speed. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't really matter.
I know
Point
Mercedes
is,
do a
it
10
was-
speed and it has 2 reverse gears.
Jesus.
It has
okay,
2 speeds
as
of
you do.
reverse.
Which in fairness, like you've got that many
Yeah.
cogs, there's bound to be something like that in there. But yeah, that was a magnificent machine. I only got to ride in it once. He picked me up from the train station in it, but Jesus, it went like a stabbed rat. I would not expect a 2-litre engine, and it was like it's a big, heavy car. The 3 Series has got fat. I mean, like everything else.
Yeah, the
yeah,
Messerschmitt
it
KR20 has 2 reverse gears.
The Messerschmitt. Oh God.
7-speed auto in many recent Mercedes has 2 reverse gears. Yeah, the 5-speed auto also had 2 reverse gears. The current 9-speed only has 1. Because obviously it's 9 speeds plus reverse, so it's 9 with a 10th.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was 7 with an 8th and a 9th for reverse, as you do.
Am I allowed a tactical F-bomb? Don't know if we're going to get demonetized.
Yeah, sure.
It's well earned. Fuck iDrive.
Yes.
Aidborn invoked it in chat, and this is one thing that I refuse to forgive BMW for. Yeah, my dad's got an E62. It's the 5 Series.
Yeah.
It's the one I'm driving at the minute with Doomba in the back, and no car manufacturer should put that many functions behind a screen.
The
like,
E60
even
was
now,
the first. The E60 and the E92s were the E90. Sorry,
and they
the
learned
E60
their
and
lesson.
the E90 was the first generation of iDrive that they went,
Yeah.
oh my god, it can do everything, and they didn't listen to the part where somebody said, but should it?
Yeah, and to adjust your air distribution, iDrive.
Yeah.
To adjust heat distribution, iDrive.
iDrive.
Like you have temperature controls,
Yeah.
but to adjust like how the air is distributed and everything, iDrive. Nav, understandably, is
Yeah,
in
I get
iDrive.
it. Yeah, that's fine.
All of your radio controls, iDrive.
Yeah.
Like the amount of stuff that is sat on one little like rotary and 4-way knob is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. I hate it.
I have a horrible feeling that a non-zero amount of the current lack of controls in cars is owed to people looking at iDrive and going, ooh, what if we did that but more and worse?
But we
even
could
worse?
do that.
There's one thing I will give it over current implementations like touchscreens and everything is at least if you're driving along and you've got like your hand on the iDrive controller, you can be looking at the road, glance at the screen, make a little adjustment to the thing, wait for it to like process because it takes a moment, and then look back at it and nothing will have moved unexpectedly. With a touchscreen, you've got to like recalibrate where your hand is continuously. So you've got to take your eyes off the road, home in on the thing that you need and tap it, and then like the latency is so much worse with touch. Well, especially with a bad touchscreen, like the Renault Zoe that I'm currently dailying to and from the office is absolutely horrendous. It is genuinely hazardous to do anything with like the infotainment system on it, because you have like it's all through touchscreen. There's no physical controls for any of it apart from volume, and it takes so long to react to a press. And like the only way to do it even vaguely safely is you like brace your hand on the screen surround and hope that the buttons you need are within finger reach, so that you can glance, tap a thing, and you know, that sort of thing. Yeah. Because otherwise, the amount of time that you need to
Pretty
yeah,
much.
this is I do like Age saying that NCAP have updated some of the testing.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you now
they
can't
have.
get 5 stars for certain touchscreen controls. Touchscreen controls as a set are okay, but there's some stuff I don't know what the stuff is. Like your headlights.
I would almost
something,
rather have a touchscreen over having any button that is just a touch button, because at least I know it's on the touchscreen, and the touchscreen is normally approximately in eye line.
Yeah.
So many of them are you have touchscreen, like the Mark 8 Golf has its volume control and its temperature control right underneath the touchscreen, so you're like, oh, I'll just put my hand on here to do. Why did I turn the?
I'm seeing middle fingers from off camera from a modern Golf owner.
Jess has one. I had one as a hire car recently when I flew up to Glasgow, and oh my god, that got old fast.
Yeah.
I was.
This, I mean, and I'm not even going to pull it all. Call me a Luddite, because I just am one. This is one thing I love in the SD1.
Yeah.
As I'm moving my controls around, I can physically hear things moving. I know that the car is doing exactly what I ask, and I can do it by feel. I know where my air distribution is because I can feel like as flaps move and everything. I can feel the mechanism doing stuff, and I go, okay, well, my air distribution, if I go here, I've got fan speed 1, here I've got fan speed 2, here I've got recirc, based on mechanical feedback from the thing. Yeah, tactility is horribly underrated in modern car design.
Yeah, it was, and it's the second one that I've had, and I always forget that it does it every single time.
The Golf 8 software is just the worst. It's horrible in every way.
The Tesla iPad makes you have autopilot enabled. Wow.
Makes sense if you have.
Oh, sorry, yes, yeah. I misread that completely. I was like, that's awful.
Yeah.
But yes, so there will probably be at some point some little resin castings of the massive bucket of rust that we have behind.
You were going to go somewhere. I interrupted to talk about courtesy cars, and you wanted to talk about your Omega journey around America in the rental.
Yes, so talking about handing back cars with a lot of miles on them, I picked up a rental car in Tampa, in Florida, last July, with 470 miles on the clock. And I had some time to kill between my flights because the return flight was expensive. So I had 10 days. And I was like, how do I make this as cheap as possible? I will go and see some friends. So instead of just waiting around and basically loitering at my friend's house for nearly 2 weeks, I went and saw some various other friends. And I drove from Tampa all the way up to Iowa. From Iowa across to Los Angeles.
You should get a map of the US up on there real quick and actually point at things. Because I know where a lot of coastal cities are, and I know like a handful of cities that aren't on the coast.
Can I have my aux, please? There we go. So
that might have been a bit far.
So I flew into Tampa down here on the west coast of Florida. And I decided I was going to go and see John, Mad Scientist Garage John, who we've had in chat and done a few things with every now and again. He helped us build the Wrathfinder, and he lives in Iowa. So I drove all the way up to here, drove right the way across the Panhandle, stopped in Memphis overnight, and then drove up to the centre of Iowa, basically.
What's that in miles, give or take? That 1,500?
Nominally, yeah, give or take, yeah.
Okay.
Spent a few days up there, went to a car show, the video of which I still haven't finished editing yet, even though this was July last year. And then...
first leg, 1,500 miles.
Yeah. Second leg, about 1,800 miles from Iowa all the way across to Los Angeles, over here. So I came right the way across the Continental Divide. Now, bearing in mind, I came across the Continental Divide in this rental car. I did not spare this rental car at all. I went exactly with the flow of traffic, and the flow of traffic was doing 90. Unfortunately, the top of the Continental Divide on I-70 is at 11,170 feet, and I went up that mountain at 90. For about 3 hours from 5-ish thousand feet above sea level, and just kept going, and then went all the way down the other side, and went all the way down through Vegas into Los Angeles. I've lost my mouse pointer. There we go. Spent a few days over there with Van from Blacklist Garage, so stayed there for a few days, and then, as you'll notice on here, there is a lot of points along Route 66. So I did from LA out to Albuquerque, and then Albuquerque out to Oklahoma City on Route 66. Got all the way out here, then went down to New Orleans, and then went back over to Tampa. And when I handed that car back, I had done 7,500 miles in 14 days. I was averaging 800 miles a day on the days where I was doing big drives. And yeah, I handed that car back with just a shade under 8,000 miles on the clock from having had 470 from the factory. And it has an oil life indicator in percent. It says how many percent oil life you have left before you need an oil change. And just as I came across out of Louisiana into Alabama through here, it went to 0%. And I called the rental company. I said, hey, this says that it needs an oil change. And I still have miles to do. What do I do? And they went, oh, no, it's fine. You can drive it with 0% oil life for another 2 or 3 days yet. And I thought...
I don't think you know how many miles a day I'm doing.
Yeah, at the rate I'm going, that's another 2,000 miles. You really don't want me doing that. So I handed this thing back with 0% oil life, a crack 2 feet long across the windscreen, which appeared in the last 12 hours of driving. It went from a chip to all the way across. It was a Chevy Malibu. It was literally nothing special. I deliberately wanted...
Biggest selling car in America.
I deliberately wanted a saloon because the fuel economy would be better. If I'd been doing it in like an SUV or something that we normally get, like a Class F from Avis, we'd have had like a RAV4 or an Explorer or something. I dread to think how much you'd have spent on fuel. It would have been 20 to the gallon at best. As it was, I got 30.4 to the gallon out of this across 7,500 miles.
Right?
Yeah. That's American gallons.
I still love how everything's bigger in America except for pints and gallons.
Yeah. So that is the equivalent of about 36 to 38 to the gallon, give or take, depending on your roundings.
Which isn't bad. Like, that's a decent number.
Yeah, across 7,500 miles from a 2-litre automatic.
Doing more miles doesn't hurt your economy.
It does when you're crossing that kind of terrain. that varied
No,
level
you-
of terrain going up those hills and down. Admittedly, going down the other side, it said I got 54 to the gallon. That
I'm surprised
ruined
it was that low.
that ruined the economy. Well, the problem is it doesn't just go down;
Oh,
it
right,
goes
okay.
down, it goes up again. And
I suppose
up
it is
again, so-
over such a long distance. It's actually not a steep gradient.
Yeah, basically that.
yeah.
So yeah, I handed that back, that car back, wet, dripping, worn out, and if anybody else ever got that car, I'm sorry. If you ever happen to see this, I don't think you will, but if you ever got,
If you're one of the 10 people in the world,
Yes. Wow, I ruined that car. Not deliberately, like I didn't deliberately go out of my way to break it. I just used it for what it was needed. Driving a lot, very quickly, whilst it was very new. I think it was actually still on its delivery oil. It hadn't had an oil change since it was broken in because of the percentage that was ticking down by. I managed to work out how many miles was a percentage of oil life. And the 4% that it was down before I got it was 96% oil life. That 4% really did equate
take
to
it back to nearly
to
0 miles.
470 miles. So yeah, it rolled off the factory at 0. It was filled with oil,
And then
it
promptly
was
got the absolute shit beat out of it.
yes. Oh, after 1,000 miles, you should change the oil. Not today.
10 miles out the wind.
Oh, the neglect that rental cars have to put
Yeah.
up with is quite incredible.
Yeah.
I do wonder what happens to end-of-life rentals.
They get sold.
Yeah?
They go to auction and they just get sold on.
And they just disappear into the
Avis
general market.
even have a thing which says, "Do you love our cars? You can buy one of our X rentals." Which I can't imagine that ever being a good. It revved a lot, particularly when you're going up a steep gradient of like 15%, and you need to put the power down, and it drops 2 cogs.
Was it boosted or was it naturally aspirated?
Natural?
Oh god, you really will win it to go up the hill. I mean, at least with a turbo engine, it can compensate by feeding in more boost. But
yeah, it was not happy.
yeah,
Not, as I say, not because it was broken or anything. It was just
it was just beat.
It was
yeah.
just getting worked hard all the time.
Good effort though.
But yeah, that was quite the thing. So yeah, there are a couple of videos from a nice big car show in Smooth, in Iowa, and a couple of car shows. And a couple of videos from doing the first half. Well, no, I suppose it's the latter half of Route 66 because it's the end. It's not. It starts up north, Chicago, and it ends in LA officially. So I did the back half from Oklahoma. In reverse, travelling from LA. So
that's very Bugs Bunny. I'll just do it the other way around in reverse.
Yes, yeah, basically that.
Sounds like it's 3D printed.
Yeah, pretty much. Print from the top down. It's easier. So yeah, that poor little car. it got so much abuse. It was unreal, and I feel very sorry for it in a way. But it also did exactly what I needed it to do, and that was exist and be cheaper than driving an SUV, which it absolutely was. So yeah, you were saying you'd had. What rentals have you had then, aside from when we've been to the States? Because obviously we had that because you had the Mustang.
Yeah, so Gav and I blagged our way into a Mustang because we rented some
we had the
wanted
RAV4
something
the first
halfway.
time.
Yeah, so we wanted something halfway decent. They didn't have the thing that we asked for. They had a Mustang. And as the guy walked off to see if he could get it, I go, "If it helps, it's my birthday." And then he came back with the keys to the Mustang.
Yes.
5 litre, obviously.
Obviously.
No EcoBoost nonsense here.
Yeah, because it was the GT, wasn't it? Yeah.
I genuinely... No, I've rented... I think I've rented a car once in my life. And it was some like horrible little... Astra, like it was literally just a car.
Yeah.
It was so utterly unremarkable, I can't even remember what it was. I just don't care. And I think it was when we were helping Andy move house, and we just needed like an extra pair of hands or something.
Sure.
I've rented vans more times in my life than cars.
Yeah, like I've
definitely.
rented vans like a bunch
yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
But
I've rented a lot more vans than I have cars for sure. I mean,
which in fairness, you have a car and you don't have a van.
Yeah.
So. You know.
Yeah, but my cars get written off a surprising amount of the time, apparently.
Yeah, true.
The last one, when the previous A6 got written off, I got a Mercedes E-Class.
Yeah.
And I got to say, for the 7 weeks I had that was very nice.
I mean,
it was very, very comfortable.
I think part of the reason I don't rent many cars is like my calibration, like my sort of default thinking about how much cars are worth financially is so low that I look at the rent. I look at the cost of renting a car.
Yeah.
Like, and if I need transport for like a couple of days, I'll borrow something.
Yeah.
I will find a friend, find a member of my family, and just pinch a spare car for a bit.
Pretty much.
If I need something for longer and I don't want to feel like I'm taking the mick, then I would think about renting something, and I look at how much it'd cost, and I go, why would I do that? I could just go on eBay, ending soon, no reserve, and I could buy a car for less than
pretty
like
much.
most rentals, and then at the end of it, I still have a car,
Yes.
which granted, I might well scrap. But to be fair, I've never done that. I've never actually followed that line of reasoning through to the conclusion of buying a car for a particular mission.
Yeah.
Does it have 3 months MOT left?
Yes.
3
Done.
months? Oh, that's a bit much. I suppose it makes it easier to sell at the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the closest I've ever been, and like a rental wouldn't have done this job, but in terms of like crappy cars, some years ago, also in 2016, that was a big year for us. Doomba, I did this big road trip that I'll get to in a second, and I moved here to start PedalBOX with Aid. 2016, I did a big banger rally, like charity road trip thing.
I'm getting the pictures.
Cool. And I
Specifically
did
of the
that.
car, not of the rally.
Yeah. So, and like one of the big rules is like you can't have a car that's worth more than a certain amount of money. And Aidborn is kind of funny that we ended up in the same place. Aid mentioned the scum run.
Yeah.
So I'm about to talk about Monte Carlo or bust. And for that, I went on eBay and I just went ending soonest, like below £200 or something, and I got a little Renault Laguna. Threw some paint on it and everything because it was bought for a charity road trip, so we had to like put the car in cosplay and everything. But then once it was done, I brought it back and like somehow it hadn't broken. We'd spent the entire trip 2,500 miles down through Europe and back with one of the CV joints going tick 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 the whole way along. And I was like, it's going to let go at any moment. We're going to be like driving across the Alps, or we're going to be going through a tunnel, or we're going to be driving onto a ferry, or we're going to be doing 110 down a motorway, and a CV joint's going to explode. And somehow it just didn't. So I got it back, and I'm like, well, I've still got a car. At this point, I also had a turbo Volvo estate, little Volvo V40. That, in fairness, was a great little bus, £750. So I think that like sets where we're at. £750 Volvo, £150 Renault Laguna.
Oh, it was 100. I thought it was 165.
No, I got 165 for it when I scrapped it.
That was it.
And I bought it for like 150 something and some change. Like I basically
There we
bought it for pennies.
go.
And then I drove this thing nearly 15,000 miles.
I know you worked out it cost you less than a penny a mile.
Not less than, it was about a penny per mile. So I bought this thing on however many miles it was. I drove it for a little under a year, I think, or maybe a little over a year, I can't remember. And the only reason I got rid of it in the end is because when I was moving house from Southampton up to here, I had to... I was living in a house here at the time with a whole bunch of like friends and former colleagues. A load of them had left their stuff behind, so I had to take a huge amount of stuff to the tip. I did more than a dozen runs to and from the local recycling centre in that, and unfortunately on the last one, something scooted forward and cracked the windscreen. And at that point, I'm like, well, I don't actually need the car anymore, because by the time the MOT expired, I had the SD1, and I was dailying that, because it was actually very reliable, as you may or may not expect for a 30-something-year-old Rover. But yeah, that thing, I did 15,000 miles in it, and I bought it for 150 quid. I never put oil in it. I didn't put tyres on it.
There it is being loaded.
Yeah. I did.
After having rescued my battery back out of it, because someone...
Left it without a battery on
No.
I'd also robbed the earth wire for
Correct.
the Rover.
Yes. Not only did it not have a battery in it, it also didn't have a negative terminal to the battery to earth the rest of the car to it. And thus, I had to do this abomination with a hefty piece of speaker cable.
Hi, Mal.
Wherein the battery went in, and in order to start the car, I just touched the terminal to the body with this massive piece of earth cable and said to the guy, "Can you start it now?" And then we moved it out, got it on, and I took the battery back out and my cable.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it was literally just, it was touched from one to the other, and that was all we did. It was horrendous. I cannot believe that actually worked.
But yeah, that honestly was a brilliant little bus. And yeah, 150 quid, and I did 15,000 miles in it. And I think the only things I spent money on in maintenance was like
Yes,
I put-
110 kilometers.
Yes, totally.
Definitely. It's
was
fine.
like
The
a
statute of
window
limitations
motor.
is well expired. It was definitely miles.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think all I did to it was like a window motor. It came with no radio. The radio was in the boot.
Brilliant.
Came with no aircon, but that's fine because the driver's door window just like fell down into the door as we were getting off the ferry in Europe on the way over there. So we're like, oh, guess we're not here then. Which is nice because until that point the driver's door window didn't work. So we were driving around Europe with no aircon and like no working driver's window. So it just helpfully opened itself for us.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So that just utterly destroyed all of my expectations forever for cheap
Yes.
motoring.
Yes.
I will never look at a rental that costs £100 a day and think it is reasonable when I had that.
Compared to a car that you drove for a couple of years and sold for as much as you paid for it.
I scrapped it for more than I bought it for.
Yeah, you didn't get as much because they took.
There was like a disposal fee
It was
or
the
something that
transport
came out
fee
of
to
it,
to come and pick it up and move it. If you'd been able to drive it down there,
Which I totally could have. Totally illegally, but like functionally it could have.
functionally it would have driven even with this junk.
Yeah.
Functionally it would have done it, but legally you
Yeah.
couldn't
And
have.
then the
But-
car
and they
I-
would have saved yourself, I think, 60 quid. So
Something
you
like
still
that.
got 105, I think, from it.
And the car I had before it was the Tank, which
Yes.
I bought for £750, and I drove that until the engine gave out.
Yeah.
Well,
That was,
gave
what,
out. It
4
was like a
years you had
lambda
the
sensor
Tank?
failed or something. It was like, I don't know, like 3-ish, 4-ish,
Yeah.
something like that. And yeah, like granted, I did actually have to do some maintenance on that because I actually did do.
Yes,
Yeah,
you did things and stuff.
I did like
which is fair.
but even that, it was like a lambda sensor, maybe an oil change,
Yeah.
and some brakes or something. Like it really wasn't a lot.
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where my head is at when I
that
think of
is-
the cost of motoring.
That is by a wide margin one of the single
The
jankiest
jankiest
thing
things
that
you've
I
ever
have
done.
ever done with a witness.
Yeah.
A witness that had no idea, didn't know me from Adam, and like, oh no mate, don't worry, I'm just going to spark it off this. And just, the scrap man looked at me like I was insane and doing something questionable.
Yeah.
Do you know how bad it has to be
For the scrap
man to be like, mate, really? That is a questionable day at best.
Yeah.
I can.
So yeah,
Make this
unfortunately,
go away.
rentals will never make sense to me.
Yeah.
And even the Rover, right, my cherished classic car.
Yes. It's like with a witness.
Yeah.
Yes, I made that very, very clear.
Yeah. Even my SD1, like my cherished classic car. Now, granted, I have actually spent serious money on it. Like
Yes.
it is now well into 5 figures. But
Yeah.
I bought it for like, I think it was £3,000 and some change.
It was 2.
2 and some change. Yeah. Like.
Pretty much. Pretty
and,
much.
And my other
you
cars.
probably paid 3 on the loan.
I didn't get a loan for it.
Ah, okay.
I paid half in cash, and my parents paid the other half, and I paid
okay.
them back over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no interest on that one, thankfully. And my other cars were a Fiat Marea that was, I don't know, somewhere around 500 or 600 quid.
Yeah.
And a Mark 1 VW Golf Cab, which was 1,500.
It's still out back.
Still out back. Yeah. Somehow it hasn't just like collapsed onto the ground. I genuinely don't know how that chassis is still holding together.
It's been
Superior
undercover,
German
isn't it?
steel is
Yeah.
just melted down Panthers.
Yeah.
Why did I struggle for so long to remember the Panther? I knew you said T-34s. I'm like, nope, not many of those left in Germany.
No.
Lots of Panthers in Russia, not so many T-34s in Germany.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah,
That's
that's.
a very useful drink holder outside while we work.
oh, the AIDS Golf.
Oh no, that's my golf.
Oh, okay.
That's
His
the blue
golf is
one.
the one next to my golf.
Mine's the cab. Yeah.
But in fairness, there is a box full of parts over there because they finally came back in stock. One of the major problems I've been having is every time I've had money to buy the parts to rebuild that engine, they've been out of stock. And then when I've had to use that for something, and I've gone, it'll be fine, I can replace it in a month. They've then
They come back in stock when you haven't got money.
and then gone again. So
Possible.
eventually, I had this over Christmas. I needed to get obviously new bearings, new big end bearings, new main bearings, new bolts for the big ends, and main cap bolts as well, because they're stretch bolts, so you can only use them once. And the bearings were out of stock most places. The bolts were out of stock in those same places, but I could get them elsewhere. But there was a place in Germany that had a full kit of all of the bearings and all of the bolts to put the crank in. And I was like, brilliant, this is fantastic. It was €200 plus shipping. Shipping was 20 quid to get it over here, but that's reasonable.
We paid not far off that for a set of bloody brake pads for the A3. Granted, it was at the Nürburgring.
No,
but-
it's 92 I paid for them.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Not as bad
still,
as I
for a
thought.
pair of rear pads
Yes.
for Rowdy
Yeah,
and an A3.
pads like that big.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So we did. So I was looking to try and get hold of this, and it went out of stock, and they had everything without the main cap bolts or the rod bolts. I can't remember which one it was, as a different bundle. Similarly, like reasonably priced comparatively, but none of the bolts in stock anywhere. So there was no point buying them because I just have to buy the bolts anyway. And I might as well just wait because I can't do it without the bolts. So I was like, I'll just wait and wait and wait. So eventually that came in, then got stung for 60 quid of import duties. Ooh. VAT plus the handling charge for holding on to it whilst they wrote out an invoice for 40, 50. Yeah, exactly. I've got a head gasket now as well. The other thing I need to buy is the timing chain kit, because that's a couple of £100 because the wear plate on that Golf is not meant to be used if it's more than about 0.5 mil of wear into the tensioning plate, and mine is nearly 2. Fortunately there was enough tension in the spring that it kept it all in time and it was fine, but that kind of is indicative of how old those chains are, so they definitely need replacing. So that's a couple of £100 that I was hoping I wasn't going to have to spend, but am. All of the kits that I can find have the wrong tension plate in. They have a flat one that has 2 rivets in holding the friction material on, and those rivets wear. It wears down into the rivets, they fail, and it ruins your timing chain. So I need to get the sort of full poly one, which is only available separately, or you can get it for a different engine, all included, and it's one thing after another after another.
This entire adventure, like the entire history of your Mark II since I met you, has just been, hey, Aid.
Yes, yeah, basically that.
Every opportunity.
Oh, you tried to do a thing. Wow, you got really close to being successfully finished there. Wrong. So yes, that will be going back together this year because I now have parts.
I'll believe it when I see it.
You're helping.
You've been saying
you volunteered. You volunteered.
Oh, shit, so I did.
You're like, oh, I can come round and give a hand. I'm like,
did you sign anything?
No, thank you.
But it is in a textual conversation, which counts as evidence in court, just like email.
Yeah.
Hang on, don't the government delete WhatsApps now?
So yeah, so that will be going back together once I get the other bits, which should be coming next month. So thank you to all of our patrons, a number of whom are in the room. Thank you. Hang
on, so I'm paying for it and
yes, you are! To be fair, these are the first patron gift.
So for everybody who I can get patron money for the SD1 now.
For everybody,
the precedent's been set. You've crossed this Rubicon, my man.
For everybody who has contributed at least $100 over the time, or sod it, if you just want to throw $100 at it, honestly, just go and spend it at the shop. It's easier. And we probably keep more of it as well. You will get a free keyring, which is a great thing for having given at least $100 to the cause. But there are also some other gifts that are coming, which, if you probably noticed something else in the studio that wasn't there last time, which is this piece of art that I got from Superfast Matt from being a patron of him, because that seemed like a perfectly reasonable thing, and I really wanted to try and see that Tesla-powered Jaguar actually work. And now he's building an off-road Viper, because of course you are. So yeah, that is hopefully coming along soon as well. Actually, no, I've
been saying I hope to get back on the Rover soon for nearly a year now, and I have just so far completely failed to.
I mean, you did end up moving house and moving jobs in the middle of that, which was it's always one of those things. Like, I'm just going to move jobs, but when I get my first pay, I will do the.
It's not even a pay thing.
Yes, it does. The Viper runs. I haven't watched the video yet, and oh my god, I'm so thrilled that thing moves. So. Is that what you want, Mallory?
Am I the right aspect ratio for that? I feel like I'm. Yeah.
I mean, you're thin.
Yeah.
If it was me, it would just be a mattress. Let's be honest. Yeah, pretty much that. So yeah, and there'll be other little trinkets and things like these when we make some more of them, and basically buy some more resin.
I don't know if you missed it, by the way, but I did quite like Aid's idea of you put a little bit of rust and a little bit of resin, and you slowly layer it up.
Yeah. So Tony did these for me purely as a test, and I literally said, throw some in, dump the resin in, and then do one with, and then one just sprinkling it on the top, and see how it settles through, which is the one that you launched down here.
Threw down, because I'm a tech.
It's there. I got it. So you can see that one is much, much clearer. The one you've got in your right hand had rust kind of sprinkled through it.
Okay.
So there are still a lot of bubbles
so
in
I
both
can actually
of
see
them.
it's quite brown.
Yeah.
Where I'm guessing like little tiny bits of particulate of
basically that. Whereas
settled
the
in it,
other
as it
ones
were.
are quite clear. But yeah, they'll probably be a little bit thinner than that. Or I'll make them into a cube if I do them quite layered with lots and lots of bits in. But yeah, have a look at them.
Of all the things I've sourced in the last 6 months, by the way, 6 months-ish, year-ish, especially for like this horrible contraption here, finding a body pillow supplier is... I think that's a part of the internet I don't want to go into.
Honestly, there's a lot to be said for being able to support the entire length of your body with a pillow. Just what a brilliant
I don't
concept.
think that's what they're for.
No, I don't. But I'm saying I'm bringing this back down to a universal grading.
The rest of us wrap ourselves around a duvet.
Yeah, but I've got my duvet on top of me.
Two duvet?
No, I can't do that. So the problem I have is I end up going and I end up like this, and I just banana my shoulders and wake up in the morning going, "Oh God, what have I done?" And it's terrible. So I
mean, that does
have
definitely
something
feel a
to
bit worse than waking up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. So
yeah. So
that's
yeah.
too old of a reference now, isn't it?
I was going to say, body pillows. Henna's or someone got one made of geosnipe.
Yes, he did. Yeah, wasn't that for Gio's 40th?
Oh no.
30th?
No idea.
It was certainly his birthday.
Ended up in the "We Are No Longer a raffle.
Yes.
For something at one point.
Yeah, I bet. So yeah, I mean we basically just ended this stream into our usual just like chatting, and we did have another plan for something that we were going to do, which I completely forgot because I put it down behind me. This, which you may or may not be able to make out, not as a fault of Chris's handwriting, because it is actually pretty legible.
It was a fault of I had no idea how much information I was going to have to jam onto this thing when I started.
I said, Chris, before we finish up for the day,
Let's grab a couple of measurements.
Let's just grab a couple of measurements from
Oh no,
the
that's
gear shift.
completely
Is it-
illegible.
It's probably out of focus.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, that will be in plane with me. So
I mean, okay, some of it's a shopping list, but a lot of it,
Yeah.
we figured the focus would suck. I suspect it's actually focused well behind you, because I think even you're a bit bleary-eyed. But yeah, that is
I'm just going to move it further back. So all this tiny writing, yeah, just look at it really closely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is a whole bunch of notes on various different dimensions for bits
Yep.
around the gear shifter.
And
in
I
the
gave
track
you
car.
absolutely no quantifiable, here is the amount of information we are going to
Yep.
take down. So you started making a small drawing for something that should have been 4 or 5 times the size of this
Yes.
piece of paper, let alone just this tiny section in the middle here. So yeah, it's not ideal, and we were going to try and make something in CAD, and I mean we could, but nah.
Yeah. Too busy talking.
It's
But
not going to
my
get.
problem is
It's
that
not
I
going to get printed tonight.
Yeah.
It's not going to get made before a while anyway. So
Yeah, and I don't know if you have the same problem when you're CADing as I do. I actually find it quite difficult to like keep my brain in multiple places and actually CAD competently while also paying enough attention to the conversation to actually take part in it. Like I can, yep,
No, I've
definitely.
done.
I
I've
can
done
nod a lot.
reasonably.
but-
Admittedly, it was a lot simpler things. I did manage. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was. I made something. I was like, oh god, I could just print that, and I designed it and designed it and sent it to print in under 40 minutes, and it worked perfectly the first time, and I was genuinely stunned.
Yeah.
It wasn't a particularly complicated part, but I now can't remember what it was. It might actually have been a mount for the camera. I basically re-rigged all of my camera stuff, so we have 3 wireless mics, obviously the 2 that we're wearing, and I also have another one that I printed a load of stuff for, which is... I have to be careful not to just destroy everything. So that is the wireless stick mic that we have, and last year I bought a couple of these little surrounds and put some of our stickers. Stickers are available at shop.pedalbox.show.
And in the nicest possible way, it does look a touch
It's all right,
school
but
child.
it is slightly off-white, which is not great, and it is very mediocre in its layout. I literally went, I have some stickers and I could throw them at this, and it will do for a given value because I need something now, and this is the best I can manage. And that is not that great. But having modelled these wonderful keyrings that will be available at shop.pedalbox.show in a short time, I then made a new piece. So this is 4 separate pieces that all then stick together, so you can replace them, and then the
We're
logo
all about repairability
just
here.
glues onto the front, so it holds in very nicely, and it just sits on the top like that. And I took this to Rustival for some of the filming stuff that we did. But yeah, it does work very, very nicely. I'm quite pleased with how it came out overall, and how well the glue held up. And the fact that it actually does still come apart.
I like the fact that I liked it disassembling. I thought you'd have glued it together or something, but
It was a good enough friction fit on the pins that I thought, oh, I could glue two of
very satisfying.
I could glue two of them together, and then it's just in halves if it ever gets broken. I went, well, actually, if it gets broken, I might as well just leave it, because the fit is good enough.
Yeah.
It fits around. So, so I made that as well. But this is our other mic, and obviously, because it is a Shure and these are Sennheisers, it has a completely different mounting system. So I ended up making a universal bracket that goes on the camera, which will take either of them in any given order.
I've
and
been
it
looking
clips
around the
on,
studio, and the number of
and
like
then-
little bits of plastic that you've had that machine shit out is quite quite incredible.
And then have another, and then has a brace that goes on the back of that then bolts onto the rest of the camera. And then there's another one on the top cam, which is I think currently off at the moment. Oh no, it is on.
Top cam, I can see
it
it's
is
lit
on.
up.
It's just very badly
Oh no,
set up.
it's so dark.
Yeah.
It's set wrong, and it's been so dark it's useless.
So that now has a little spring hole, a little cable holder, so that it doesn't let the cable sag on the side anymore. So that holds it up.
The gist here is get a 3D printer. It will ruin your life, but it'll
Print your
fix loads of
problems
little-
away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what a lot of stuff has been, and yeah, it is literally just a case of, but I could just print that, right? I could just print that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
is-
your head is now kind of where mine was earlier on in the track car project, which is I'm seeing all these little bits, and now granted, the particular things that we tried tackling were really, really stupid, like they were doomed. Stuff like the intercooler ducts, which the geometry on them, like
we definitely could have made that work. And now I have like a bit more appreciation. I could have been a lot more use at that point. However, meh.
yeah, but like
It's just there are easier, better ways
yeah,
to do
but
that.
you remember my general tendency toward we could print this, we could CAD
See,
this
Ronald?
at night. We could CAD this at night. We
Yeah.
can print it like overnight in
Yeah.
the days, etc.
There are
And, like,
still
we can
so many
async
parts
print-
that we need to do on the car. We still need to print light covers for the back, for the rear lights. So the rear lights go onto a metal plane with a little box in. The cable goes in, and that's where all the electronics are hidden inside. It needs a little clip to go over that, which is a dead simple thing to make. We've just never got around to it because we've never had the lights off the car since we went, that would work for long enough to actually sit down and model what we needed, which was careless. We need to do a headlight surround, which is far from critical. I did start
But
work
it is,
on that
it is
to a
awkward
degree.
geometry.
Yeah, I
Because
worked
it's
on
like,
that.
It's not just the relatively complex geometry of the lights.
Yeah.
It's the fact that everything is set like none of like a lot of what the other stuff we've been doing is you figure out the profile of something and you just kind of extrude it.
Yeah.
And then you figure out a different profile that has to be on it and you extrude that.
Yeah,
and so on.
and then cut
But the
down through it.
headlights-
And the headlights, as it turns out, are even more complicated than we thought. One of our friends came over, Skep, came and we measured up the light sizing so that we could actually make some stuff. And the plan was basically I was going to make some covers to go over the lights in order to work out what we needed, like the reference points between them. So they're hexagons with big holes cut through so that they fit over the headlights. And we measured one and we went, well, they're obviously all the same. No, there are 2 millimeters diameter difference between each of the lights, and the tolerance I put on the first one is enough to fit over the middle one, but not over the outside one. So we have to go back and do it again. But it did work enough that I could start getting some of the geometry. And as I was looking at it, 2 of them are dead flat and 1 of them is curved. So there is a curved profile that I need to cut into it as well and work out what radius that is. So that is going to take a long time. And ultimately, when I got the 3D printer, it had a lot of green filament, and I had nothing that I really needed to do in green filament. So I was just kind of trying to run the green out as quickly as possible on things that I knew weren't going to be critical,
Just like
but
test pieces
would
and
be
stuff,
useful and use volume. So I made these 3 things. And they do the job, but as I say, one of them is completely wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to grab them because they're upstairs. Oh, Yeah, I did.
Well, at least I've run out of tea now, so you knocking the desk all around the place hasn't spilt any. So that could have gone worse. I'm trying to think of what I can talk about on my own. I mean, we've pretty much covered everything on Doombra, and I kind of had a few minutes ranting about touchscreens. I'm not sure what else I've got. Oh, yes, production is gesturing toward my horrible contraption of a computer. I was trying to work out what the hand gestures was. I thought it was like move along the couch or something, but yeah. A recurring feature of these streams is my janky computers, and this one is the jankiest of all of them so far. God, I don't even know where to begin. Probably the equivalent of about 3 kilos of TNT worth of lithium batteries. A whole bunch, like 400 watts of USB-C power. A computer. Like, the computer's fairly standard, to be fair. Like, that's just like a PC, nothing big. And a pretty interesting power supply. This is actually the latest part of it that I've acquired. The PC's in a fairly awful state at the minute. This is the first working model of the thing that I've wanted to build for like a year. So this is pretty much it's my rejection of specifically lapability aid. Like, that's the one part of a laptop that I don't care for. So this is like, can I get the travel ability, the bring to LAN ability, and the bring here ability of a laptop? But without having like a crappy laptop keyboard, without having a crappy laptop trackpad, without having a crappy laptop screen, without having crappy laptop repairability and all those other things. So yeah, the basic gist here is big lithium battery, shitloads of USB-C power, so I charge the thing over USB-C, and USB-C monitor, power supply that runs off a battery and powers a graphics card, and yeah, like I mean, it's kind of pointless for a lot of people, but for me it's actually pretty perfect because I travel, I bring my computer somewhere roughly once every 3 weeks, often on a train, and it's nice to not have to like lug a full tower and stuff everywhere.
As I'd say, it's Chris' ultimate rejection of everything laptop.
Yeah, and I realised, like, especially for now, this is much less convenient than a tower. Like, it took me about 20 minutes to get all the different bits plugged in. There is actually more stuff in the system than you can see here. The hollow in the back of my monitor, all of this void in here is full.
Really?
Yeah, so there's like
power.
Yeah, so I've got the power brick in there that's actually feeding the whole thing electricity because I can't remember the state of charge of the battery, so I've got it running on DC in just to, you know, if it is burning down, it's hopefully burning down slower.
Yes.
Not like that. And there's also like a little Wacom box in here that's taking video from my graphics card and power from the battery and combining them into one USB-C cable into the monitor. So, like, this is extremely goofy, and I don't recommend this to anyone. But for me, it's pretty good. So I'm one of the things that I do a lot of outside PedalBOX is I've built and I fly an autonomous sailplane. So it's a 2.5 meter wingspan, full autopilot system. It flies itself around, lands itself, all that sort of stuff. But to make all of the onboard computers work, I need a ground station. So when I go out to fly, historically I've like stolen my dad's laptop, and I imagine one day he's going to get bored of that. But this gives me my desktop computer that I can take to a LAN very easily. I can take it here very easily, and most importantly, I can take it to a field and pop it up on a little folding table, and it powers itself. And there's so much energy in this thing that it can power itself, and it can recharge the plane like 4 times over. Which, in fairness, is probably pointless because the plane can fly for 2 hours on a charge. It is frighteningly efficient. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting setup. The power supply was like, it actually wasn't possible to build a year ago when I started. These boards that I use to charge the battery and like power the whole thing didn't exist a year ago. These are little IP2368 boards. If any of you want to build a power bank, which I do actually recommend, I don't recommend building this as a whole, but I do recommend building a power bank, is these little converter boards, IP2368. They are no-name Chinese nonsense, and I'm frankly amazed none of them have caught fire yet, but I've worked them quite hard, and they've been great. Those didn't exist a year ago, and this power supply, which takes anything from 12 to 48 volts in.
And goes nicely into a CPU fan.
Yes, you can absolutely shove the wires directly into your CPU cooler. And that like spits out all of your proper like ATX feeds and everything. That didn't exist a year ago. There was a version of it, but like it had a different minimum voltage and it wasn't compatible with the battery, blah blah blah. And yeah, I just think it's more proof that the world revolves around me. That I start building this project, and all of a sudden, all the products that I need to make it work appear on the market. And yes, I don't actually want to go full 3D printed for the case. I want to go like half and half. The battery, I would like to shelling composite. So I'm probably going to put like a carbon fiber sheet top and bottom, and 3D print like ends and corner caps. And then for the PC chassis itself, will probably be similar. Because like by the time I'm ordering sheet and like building corner pieces that fit together, I may as well just do 2 of it. Yeah. Oh yeah, the battery's also a separate module. Like electronically, I can decouple the battery from the rest of the system really, really easily, which is important because that fucker is never going on an airplane. Like that is just no. I'm pretty sure if I walk into an airport with that, never mind on a plane, if I walk into an airport with that, I'll be shot. It is 500 watt hours.
Yeah.
The most you can so far beyond the limit, it's not even funny.
Well, for an electric wheelchair, you can go up to 300.
Yeah.
Per block. But for a person, it's 100. Which is why I can't take my giant batteries for the big cameras with me, because they're 177s, and I specifically have a set of what was 5, 2 of them aren't working. It might get you to have a look at them. 5 96 watt-hour batteries, and I now take 3 of them with me because...
Some airlines will allow you when it's professional production kit, but you need to write them in advance.
Correct,
et cetera,
yes,
et cetera.
yeah. And
yeah,
that means
having Peli cases and everything probably buys you a fair bit of
the fact that I have enough regular ones, I don't bother. Yeah. I'm always the millionth customer at airport security though, because I win every time. In fact, no, except for a couple when they've just been like, don't care.
No, you win every time except when Sean's travelling.
Yeah, then Sean wins.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I walked back through. I think cumulatively I probably had 500 watt hours last time I walked through.
Yeah, but I think it's only per unit. I don't think
it's
there's a
per
limit on how many units.
It's just per brick. Yeah,
and I don't think it's like you can only have 3 or something. I think you can have as many as you want.
Yeah, 2 per passenger.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So even if I exploited that, I still wouldn't be able. Like even if I broke this into pieces, I still wouldn't be able to bring it.
Unless you had more people with you in the group.
I would need 2 other people.
Yes, you would.
Like one other person still wouldn't be enough.
I just barely got through.
For his batteries.
Yeah. Probably not, because it's per person travelling.
Interesting grey area though.
Yeah.
It's like bringing stuff back through customs, just pooling the allowance, right?
They did that. So the laptop I had before this, I bought I had a Surface Book, and I brought that back through customs, and I had to declare, like it was a business purchase, I had to declare to HMRC that I had bought this thing out of the country and it was of value. So there was no hiding the fact that it was over the limit. And it seemed to be a very weird trick, if you will. If you take the earliest
this one weird
landing,
trick that the taxman hates.
Not so much that customs hate, very much so, because we were on a flight that landed well before 8 a.m. coming back from New York, and I went, hey, I got something I need to declare. So I went through the I've got something to declare aisle, and they were like, yeah, there's nobody manning it. If you need somebody, call this. Here's a phone. So you pick up the phone, you go, hi, I need to declare something. Like, oh, what is it? It's a laptop. Oh. How much? Like, 1,500 quid? Oh. Was anyone else travelling with you? Yeah? My other? Oh, it'll be fine then. Like, right, but she's also muling an enormous amount of money's worth of laptop for somebody else through. I mean, she had Wizzos.
So coming back from Orlando, it used to be that the flights from Orlando arrived at the same time as flights from Colombia. For some reason, customs didn't care about the Orlando flight.
Weird.
I know.
I'm shocked.
So
shocked that a Colombia flight takes precedence at customs over an Orlando one. Because to be fair, everything that's coming from Colombia is also going into Orlando. You wouldn't make that hop. So like, nobody's doing that multi-hop journey with that. They're all going direct.
I've got you and Yola on that trip combined, beat 10 times over on one particular run through customs.
Oh, yeah, this is when you were at the race team.
So back when I worked at Neo, one of the few funny moments, I think this is the Mexico race. So it was like what would it have been like? I can't remember when in the season it was. It was the first half of the season because I got sacked halfway through. so we were traveling to Mexico, and we'd had some new suspension made up by Multimatic. And if Andy was here right now, I'd be saying, "Why do you charge so much for your suspension?" The answer is obvious. It's because it's race teams and like money printer go brr. But yeah, so I was going through customs. They're like, "Do you have anything to do you have any high value goods?" It wasn't actually anything to declare, but it's like, "Do you have any high value goods?" And I'm like, "Well, technically, I right now have a coilover unit worth £30,000 in my backpack."
Yes.
That's a single. That's not for a pair. That's not a car worth. It's not even an axle worth. It's one individual coilover that was apparently 30 grand. And I'm sure most of that was like the design effort, but whatever. And I had no idea how to answer this. It's like there's no funny like part of the interaction here. I don't have the equivalent of "it's a what?" "Oh, I don't give a shit." I got nothing like that. What I do have is the team principal walking over and saying, "I'll deal with this," takes my bag off of me, and then urges me on. And I do not know if any money changed hands for that to get through the border cleanly. Like, I know that in theory, you declare it coming in, you declare that you'll have it with you going out, and like no one cares.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like company-backed rich white men going through customs with very expensive car parts.
Yes.
That feels like a very exploitable scenario for a customs officer. And I do wonder if there was a budget item or a budget line in Neo's accounting for bribes.
No,
I mean, everybody. Yes, yeah. It's opinionated lubrication.
Yeah. Or
it's much easier as a race team. It's way easier to justify lubrication to the tax man.
true.
So, after
shipping lube.
shipping lube. After I hastily ran upstairs, I also went to the loo and remembered to turn my mic off. You're all welcome.
Speaking of, actually,
I had it muted on the desk.
It's fine. I was like, I'm sure she will.
We will see Naked Gun.
Yeah.
be right back. I've turned my mic off. It's fine.
I've muted it on the desk.
Good. There's one of the mics, and I think it is actually mine. If you turn it off with the receiver left on, it instantly outputs a harsh 1 kilohertz tone, which might have caught you out once before. It is very, very loud and very. It was like I muted it and then went, "Oh, I wonder if that will still." Too late now. So these are the prints that I did for the headlights. So this face, which is the bottom, so they all print out like this, which I realise, actually, do it. So they all print out like that, basically. That's convenient. We have another camera. I forgot. So they all printed out in this arrangement here. And this flat face actually goes on the front of the light. So I'll just, there we go. Hey, that's about the right size. So if that's the headlight, there's 3 of them across the car. These fit on around that way. I should have picked up the one that wasn't green, just to try and make it stand out a bit. So, headlight, and this goes over. Now, obviously, this is not how pronounced any of these are going to be on the headlight surround that we build. This is purely to get a reference plane from the front of the headlight in order to start making measurements for how far back the plane needs to be. Mostly this is to avoid having to remove the headlight from the car, because that's actually surprisingly difficult to do now. Although I might need to buy another one anyway, because we've broken one of the mount tabs and it is in the wind. So
I might
need to get one.
Would I be right in remembering that taking a headlight out now would be drilling out a bunch of rivets on the wheel arch?
No.
Taking an air curtain off. Detaching some of the front end of the car? Question mark?
Yes. In order to definitely get the headlight out, you certainly need to unbolt the air curtain from the side, from the front of the car, so that where the bonnet of the car comes over. I'm sure I've got a picture here somewhere. Please hold, caller.
Also, the description of the video is technically lying. It says our combat robot, which oh so nearly got on TV. It oh so nearly got in the arena.
It nearly
definitely got on TV.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, that's more technicality. Yeah, I suppose. Let me just find a convenient picture in order to explain this. Oh, well, actually, that's the position that you basically need to get to in order to remove the light cluster.
Yes.
So there is the air curtain underneath the side of here, which you have to remove, or at least loosen. I've never tried, so I don't know if you can get away with just loosening it. You
Possibly.
might actually have to pull the whole
No,
thing
because
off.
there's a little brackety arm thing comes quite a long
Yes,
way down
which comes
off the
down the
headlight,
bottom,
but maybe
yeah.
the headlight would tip forward enough.
Oh,
It's
actually,
quite
yeah.
deep,
To
though.
loosen it, to loosen it, you wouldn't have to take it off. To remove it, yeah, you'd absolutely have
Yeah.
to remove it. But there is also a bolt right in the top up here, which is next to impossible to get to.
Oh, because we skinned out. Yeah, so that's going to be like a through the wheel arch job.
Yeah, so you've
somewhere
got to come
awkward?
in from the back here,
Yeah,
and then you can't get a ratchet, or you probably can't get a ratchet,
be a ratchet
in.
spanner. If
So
anything,
it will be
yeah.
a ratcheted 1/4-inch drive to then turn a piece to try and get it out. That is my least favourite piece of ergonomic design on the entire car.
Yeah,
And I could not think of any other way to do it other than having a hole in the top of the wing.
repairability and serviceability in this car are not
What?
fantastic.
Sorry, what?
Repairability and serviceability go out the window with the fact that you're still working on buildability.
True,
Granted.
yeah.
I will say the fact we've had the engine in and out so many times speaks to some parts having unusually good serviceability.
Yes, yeah. It's
Like
still not fun, but it is comparatively easy to do.
Yeah.
You can have the engine out. Like if you're not doing camera and faffing around and anything, you can have the engine out of that probably in under 2 hours.
I was thinking 2 hours is roughly the number.
Like we've done it in an hour, but we haven't had to disconnect drive shafts.
Yeah.
And we haven't had to disconnect gear cables.
Yeah.
And we haven't had to drain anything out of it. But yeah, so I think you could do it in 2 hours, which is a far cry from the Hillman Imp that I was speaking to somebody at Retro Rides about. And
Oh, is this the summer gathering that I went to with
he'd
a few years
swapped
ago,
it
yeah.
out for a what was it? He'd swapped it out for a Subaru engine because it sits in the back of the Imp, so you can just pull the whole transaxle, the wheels sit forward, so it just fits nicely, and it becomes a lethal weapon to drive. But the original Hillman Imp engine is so incredibly small. Also, didn't realise, tangent counter needs to go up, they used the same engine in the original Talbot Sunbeams that turned into the Lotus Sunbeams, is the Imp engine in the front of a Talbot.
Huh.
TIL, well, okay, not quite TIL, it was cut 2 days ago, but still. He managed to have that engine. He drove the car in and had the engine sitting on a tyre out the back of the car in 7 minutes.
Christ.
It's just like...
One that I can point to as an example
What?
of
I think it's
really-
air cooled though, so there's no rag
Okay,
to
that's
take
kind
off.
of cheating,
Which
yeah.
I mean, that cuts like a minute of drainage and a minute of clips off.
So one of my best previous efforts is I loaned my SD1 to my brother. This is a mistake. My brother breaks cars. This is his one job in life. Is he breaks cars.
Sam does not break cars. Cars break around Sam.
Yeah, so yeah, I
'Cause
don't
he
want to make
doesn't-
this sound
he
like he
doesn't
rags them
necessarily
or
d-
crashes them
He
or anything.
doesn't do anything specifically to break them. However, Sam touches a car and there is a non-zero chance it's going to break.
It's like if there is anything that's at risk of breaking,
Yeah,
it will
break.
choose
It will
when he's
choose to
driving.
break.
So
It will work for you for tens of thousands of miles, and as soon
Yeah.
as it's like Sam,
yeah.
no.
So Sam was driving my Rover up a hill through town, and it turned into a smoke machine. Turns out what actually happened is a cylinder head had gone. Which, in fairness, it was a Duff cylinder head anyway, like, no issue. So he limps it back to the house, which is only like not even a half a mile from where the head went. Limps it back to the house, parks it up outside, and I'm working from home that day. We get round to lunchtime, and I'm like, all right, let's do the cylinder head. I did the cylinder head, went back in, had a sandwich, and got back to work before my hour was up. Head off. Back on, timed it back up, got the it is incredible.
Pretty good.
And like part of it is because like it's not using stretch bolts for the head. Part of it is because I mean the head gasket is even reusable. I don't recommend it, but there is a torque setting in the service manual
Yes,
for like
basically that.
how
Yeah,
tight
that
to do your
exact
head
one. Yeah, that
if
one.
you're doing it a second
The
time.
one that the shop was scared how much they skimmed off.
Yes, that head
Yes.
is the one that went.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, it's here's a very interesting one that Matt pointed out to me when we rebuild the VR.
Mm-hmm.
We can't use a piston ring compressor.
Yes, you mentioned because they're on the wonk, but with a flat top.
So piston ring compressor, it's a funnel that goes down and it closes the piston rings up. They drop in through the bore and then expand back out to fit the bore. But that relies on your deck being perpendicular to your cylinder. it is a 15-degree V, but it is a flat deck that is shared between the 15
Yeah,
degrees.
so you've got your deck there, and the pistons actually come up like this.
So the pistons come up
Yeah.
to, like this. So you can't just use a piston, because I was like, oh, I'll just print one. It'll be fun. What's the worst it's going to do? It's going to scrape the inside. It's not going to be usable.
It'll scrape plastic off and bring it down in, though.
The plastic will die, like especially PLA. Like, A, it will dissolve. B, it will be taken out with the run-in oil in 500 miles anyway. So like, it's not a problem. But, and if this physically break, like I'm holding this like it's one of them. If this were to break, oh no, it only has to work 6 times. It's fine.
Yeah.
However, it will not work. And I suspect I can probably print one that will work.
Right. What's the problem?
I would need to make and design one that will work. But it's not just, oh, I'll just buy one off the shelf and just, it will do the job, which was my immediate, oh, I'll need to get one of them. Oh, yeah, that would be really smart. No.
Like, enough VR6s get built that, like...
Yeah.
That's weird. I suppose, actually, you know
Somebody
what?
probably will make one out of billet, and it'll be beautiful, but also no good.
Think about the shape of like what's actually happening as it goes in, though.
Yeah.
With a normal engine, you've got to get the whole ring compressed and in one go. On a VR, the ring is not all going in one go.
Yeah.
So you can actually get it down on and just like pop it in a bit at a time.
Yep.
And eventually it will just go boop.
That's the benefit.
That isn't just,
the only benefit is that you can make sure it goes in partially and just close it in.
And work it round. Yeah.
But
I don't know if that's actually what you do on a VR. I don't know if they.
Essentially, that is the way.
Right.
Without having an actual specialist. I'm sure VW have specialist tool number 841.
Yeah.
Which just does the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh no.
Specialist tool 3278. I've just got the page.
3278. Okay, I was off by a factor of 4. I'm fairly pleased I was that close.
This isn't countdown rules, mate. The number of operations
But yes, so going back to these headlights, after many more tangents. Basically,
it did ratchet up pretty quick.
The plan is just to give us a frame of reference that we can tie all of these things together, glue them all together so they fit, and we then have a reference point that we can use to model the actual thing we want to make. Because it's going to have to be printed in at least 2 parts, but probably 3. So they go around, because the bed is, like, the headlight is big. It's bigger than this laptop, width-wise. It's actually massive. So these go on. And I can't remember which one it is that is off-center where it wraps around. I think it's this one, which... brilliantly.
You say this one, is it actually clear which one is which?
No, it's not. I was about to. In my genius, I labelled this one as L for left because we were working on the right-hand side. L, that's fine. And then I labelled this one as 3 because I wrote M in a different orientation for middle, and then not right, but O for outside. And I have no idea why I did them that way round. L, M, and O. Yeah. Left, middle, outside instead of inside, outside, or left and right.
And let middle be implicit.
Yeah. Not a smart man.
So you've got L3 and 0.
Yeah. So that is basically how they need to line up, because the headlights are staggered backwards. And there is a slightly different plane, which is, if I hold this right, is still miles off from where it is, unless, is that? Yeah.
Something like that, though.
Something like that, but you can see if you look down it in long cam there, it's all kinds of different angles. Like, no one is the same. So then, they're not a perfect representation. Sorry, because the angles that we were putting on here were not measured. It was just, here is the plane, and I will go back an amount. It was very, very approximate, just to get some idea and find a starting point. And yeah, that's what they turned into. So... if once we're done with them, if anyone would like some decreasingly useful desk tidies, because that's not gonna do a great deal.
It would hold some screws in place. Like if you're dismantling a PC, you could drop all the little bits in that.
Fits a cup.
So right, make another one of those and leave it on the table. I'll put my tea in it when we're doing a stream. That way, when you inevitably knock
that's your best one, because that has the greatest slant on it to fit underneath.
So yeah, I can do this.
This
and then
one-
when you cause my tea to spill.
This one, not so much. This is unhelpful.
Oh yeah.
This one is less helpful purely because it's, yeah. I could have made this one the same height, and I just didn't, and I don't really know why. But yeah,
Solution
it's,
online: grind a 7.5-degree angle on a standard piston ring compressor.
Yeah.
Like, would that not result? Would that be the right shape? Would that not
Well,
have an oval?
it's a
no, it'd have an oval bottom.
It would
but
have an
for a
oval
thing that's
bottom, but
already
in line.
it is an
Yeah.
oval hole.
So
yeah.
it is actually a 7 because it's 15 degree, and I wasn't sure if they were centered or not. But wow, it's 10 to 11.
Yeah. We did our usual thing. We just talked like
True.
forever. We've got a lot of catching up to do. To be fair.
Yes.
And we had Doomba, which like.
Yeah, that
He
was a
added
good,
a
that
lot.
was okay. Yeah, that was a good half hour or more. So, yeah, we have printed the world, and we are not yet done printing the world. The only upside is that this isn't wasteful because this is all biodegradable because it's PLA,
It's
and
not very biodegradable. It takes a long time.
somewhat. The downside is, you're gonna look at me. Oh, I've forgotten the other thing that I have upstairs.
What's the other thing?
Can you grab?
No, you don't need it yet.
Yes, please.
Stop this one.
No, it'll only be quick because Chris hasn't seen it, and I want to see his reaction on camera.
One.
The plate. It's on top of the printer.
It's not actually.
Where is it?
Oh,
It had to be moved.
we had to move it.
Oh.
Cats.
In which case, I don't know where it is, so you're going to have to find it.
Oh.
Yeah, you're going to question this, and you're going to say, well, why are you making things that are going on the external side of the car, on mounting the car, in things that are biodegradable, essentially in water? And you would be right to ask that question, and I'll tell you why. I don't know.
Simple
But a
answer is
very,
you just do
very-
it in ABS.
But a
Like
very,
you just-
very
yeah.
good excuse is these are all prototypes, and once we know that they work, then we can make them in ABS, and it will work fine. But
Apart from all the warpage.
apart from all
And
the
the
warping
fumes.
and the fumes and
Lacquer plus clear coat.
yes, yeah, it'll be fine. If we put enough paint, lacquer, clear coat, whatever on these, they'll be fine.
Aid offers that you're not a smart man is the answer to many questions.
It's so many. So that is a good chunk of the watchword of my life. Yes.
Oh, I like that.
You see, I said it would be worthwhile.
Yes.
This is the solution to our number plate surround. Yeah, thing goes at the top. The biggest problem we had with our number plate was the lights that we put on in a previous episode are very much designed for
Oh,
a
those
very
are the lights to mount to.
a very short throw, wide spread of light. So when we put them on the number plate, they illuminate the first letter and the last letter and
Very, very
almost
well.
nothing in
Yeah.
between. So this, instead, we'll have them mounted at the top, and this has space for power and then screws coming through at the top here. I'm at some point going to print out PedalBOX to go along the centre there as well, because why not? And I used some E6000 glue to stick it together, which I don't think I've got a particularly good join on it, and I did just print these out as a test fit for the shape and to make sure that it would fit a number plate, which, hey, if we have a number plate
There is
here-
one.
yeah,
There's
there is.
YCA just by your.
This is, in fact, my old
It's
A6
still
number
covered in
plate
tape, but
from when we tried to stick it to the wall, and they absolutely
Repeatedly failed.
refused to stick to
okay,
the wall.
the end just the glue just gave on the end.
Yeah.
But
So the biggest problem is it's just a completely flat butt joint, so it is not really all that stable. If I was doing it properly,
yeah, you overlap them.
I would have some sort of overlap and interlock between them. Or what I'm more likely going to do is, no, we can't use the motorbike spike because we're not a motorbike size because we're not a motorbike. Not for the IVA, we have to have full size legit number plates, no matter what. But it does, admittedly, it won't have a white one in because this will be going on the back. So it will have a yellow one in, but I haven't got a yellow one to hand.
I kind of love the idea of doing something like that front and rear.
Front would end up sticking above it. The front edge of the car
Is almost exactly number plate
is
height.
precisely
is kind of the problem.
from the roll down there is basically number plate height, so it will take a standard issue number plate and just curve to it.
I would
which
say
think
punch
is
it
why
down
it's-
into the air dam a bit. I'd be okay with going into the intake.
if we absolutely
Yeah.
need to, yeah. But the other plan is when I do it again, is to cut a big piece of aluminium to go across the back and bond the aluminium across the entire back face, like 2 inches up, which will give it some rigidity, and it will also give a nice non-flexible or not too flexible backing to it, because you can see on there. Just give you that a second. Essentially, the only as much as this is the backing piece is 3mm thick, and then the not relief, is it relief?
Border.
The border, yeah, is also either 3 or 4mm thick. There is
still not a lot of surface.
There's a huge amount of surface area, and the only bit that is above that is the border relief right at the top here, and that's doing some extremely heavy lifting. Like, you can see where the glue is stretching and pulling apart, trying to do it. And I accept I did kind of bodge this together at the last minute, and I could have done an awful lot better. But maybe in the future, if you wanted this on your car, we might make some and print them out and get them done once we actually know what we're doing and can make a successful unit. But this is basically a mock-up to put on the car, and crucially to test whether or not it was the right size for the plate, and it does appear to be so.
Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be fun to get this on and see what the lights look like as well.
Yeah,
when they're positioned like actually properly.
Yeah, so
the light distribution's all sorts of screwed at the minute.
I was quite pleased with how that came out, all told.
Yeah, that's.
And it's only really 3 parts, because obviously the end you just print twice, but
Yeah.
with different colours on, so you can print a left side and a right side.
Yeah, if you thought about doing a middle and ends, so you've got 2 joins instead of 3.
The side, well, if I did it as a middle and 2 ends, it would take up less space again. Yeah. But then you have more breaks in this. I deliberately picked the one in the middle because you have the join
the border
for the
joins
border
in the middle. Yeah,
right at the centre. So that was the only reason. Otherwise, yes, but it's more wasted excess filament.
Okay.
But yeah, it is quite neat, and it will probably end up living under here at some point.
Yeah, this one I assume.
Yeah. So I'll try not to completely destroy it. So yeah, that is all of the 3D printing exploits.
Yeah. Just as a
for the
as a quick
entirety.
sidebar, we've got Aid helpfully telling us in the super secret internal QA chat that we run for the channel, because he QAs a lot of our episodes. So any errors you can blame on him. He's telling us
any uncaught errors. I make hundreds of errors.
Granted, and to be fair, he catches a lot. But he's recommending white balance, exposure, and focus cards, and giving us a link to them. We actually have white balance
we have a
and
set
exposure
right
cards
there.
up
They're
there.
directly above the camera, and we literally ran out of time because when we
ran out of our own self-imposed deadline. But
we were like, oh, we'll get all of this stuff done, and because we were using the camera outside, it's balanced for outdoors, not indoors. Because we then suddenly discovered that the top cam wasn't plugged in, I ended up fixing that instead, which we haven't used. The production switcher disconnected itself from everything in the world just as we were planning to go live.
It's offline again.
The laptop was refusing to do anything as well. So a lot of things fell down, having been tested previously, which was really annoying. Like 4 weeks ago, we went through all of this stuff to make sure that they all worked, and it did fine.
The graphics layout's working.
And because we're very clever, we spent most of the time that ought to have been spent prepping, eating.
Yeah.
Instead, which, in fairness, eating
Lunch is
important.
good.
Like, I don't actually begrudge us or anyone that.
Yeah.
But if anyone's wondering why the tech is a bit of a disaster this time, it's just pizza.
Yeah, and we
Pizza
dared
is
to
the
leave it
reason.
alone for 4 weeks without turning it on and checking it again and again and again. So, what are you doing Wednesday? I'm probably not going to be home.
Ooh,
I'm flying back up Wednesday morning to go and pick my car up and then driving back down here again.
We may have another Thunderbird for the show in a bit.
Yes, yeah.
So next weekend, me and my old man are flying to Denmark. One of the many outcomes of me buying my house is
space.
My yes, space. But because my parents live with me now, I'm not sure if Jess is rubbing her eyes in despair.
At another tangent, did you increment it?
Yeah, just incremented from 12 to
Good.
13. So one of the many outcomes of this,
13?
yeah, is
Wow.
So my parents now live with me. I've mortgaged myself up to my eyeballs, but in doing so, I've released a bunch of their equity. So Dad's like, I've got some money now. Fuck it, I'm going to buy a Thunderbird. He's wanted one for ever.
He's wanted one for a long time. Then
Yeah.
he saw that I'd got one and went, oh.
That kind
And
of
then-
relit the...
Yeah, and then he came over and he had a look at it and went, God, I'm tempted. And in fairness, he and I have also chatted on and off every
Yeah,
now
I
and again with him being tempted, and I have done nothing to dissuade him.
I can imagine. So
Because I am famously a terrible influence.
But he slowly traded himself up and up and up. There was one for sale over in Barry in Wales for like £8,000 or something that we went to view. And
Hang on, what colour was it?
white.
Okay, not the one I was thinking
It was in the nicest possible way. It was a bit of a fixer-upper. I think that's.
Yeah, and
being
considering
generous.
I paid £4,000 for mine, it
Yeah.
was very fixer-upper.
So we walked away from that one, which like I think it was good value for what it was. Like it was a good. It was. I'd say it was worth a little more than £8,000, and it wouldn't have taken much time and money to get it good. But my dad doesn't want a project. He has too much stuff to do, and frankly, he's bored of pissing about with cars.
He'd like something he
wants
can
something
actually
that's in good
enjoy
nick
and drive.
that- yeah, exactly. You can just take out and drive. So he slowly like traded himself up and up and up and up and up. And we're off to Denmark next weekend to go and look at one that is actually really, really nice condition. I haven't seen it myself, but I think he's probably shown you it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a
No, I
decent
haven't
wedge of
seen
money.
you. I haven't
Oh
seen that
right,
one.
okay. But it's a decent wedge of money, so he wants to go and like view it first and everything. And yeah, so if he gets it, we're going to have probably like near enough the other end of the spectrum, because the one that we're looking at is somewhere in like 30-ish grand territory. Ooh. Which it is a lot of money. He as far as I know, he's planning to like flog it again after a little while, like scratch the itch and move it on. So it's really more of a like he's tying 30 grand up in it for a bit.
Vaguely mint ones in the UK were going for like 12 to 15. Really?
No.
Oh, happy days. That
Yeah.
makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, do you know what? If I can triple my money, yeah, I'm gonna have to put money into it to fix it up and do various things. But even if I doubled it and got 8 or 9 grand for it when I sold it, put a couple of grand in, I'm still up a little bit. I can live with that.
Yeah.
But again, mostly I want to enjoy it, see how well I've done with that, and scratch the itch.
Yeah.
But like, wow, mint ones have gone up.
It's an expensive itch to scratch. But like the hope is that if they stop going up, hopefully they don't go down too much, because like it would be like he's not buying it as an investment, but the reality is it's a lot of money to tie up in a car.
The American stuff rarely ever goes down, particularly when it's that old.
My guess is though that all of the boomers who grew up and got rich, and all of like the borderline people who remember the T-Bid from when they were like a little kid, like you know the sort of stereotypical.
The Squarebird has a lot of it has two good things going for it. Number one, the convertible was used in Thelma and Louise.
Yeah,
which is
but again, all the
60
people who
which is
remember
a
that are going to
66.
die soon.
And secondly, a 66 hardtop, exactly like mine, is in the 5th Indiana Jones film.
Yeah.
Because that exact yellow car was up for sale
Right.
just after they wrapped production. And it was all like, it was in the Indiana Jones thing. The film hasn't come out yet.
Right.
So, like, using that as a big... It's amazing because this, like, nobody's seen the film,
Well, I
so we
mean,
don't know yet whether or
doesn't-
not this is something you want to celebrate.
Yeah, granted.
And
I mean, to be fair, movie cars just like they kind of coast a bit.
When
on-
I saw it,
yeah.
it was up for 14 to 15 grand.
Yeah.
And it was a mediocre... It was complete, it ran, it drove,
Yeah.
but it wasn't concourse. And that was when you could get a decent, good quality, not quite concourse, but relatively mint one for like 14, 15 grand.
Yeah. So yeah, we're off to view that, and yeah, if we get it, we'll have kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum in Thunderbird land. Although in fairness, yours is massively better now than it was when you got it. Like,
Oh yeah,
we've
absolutely.
done a world
Like,
of
I mean, it
improvement
has.
to it.
Well, it almost has brakes.
Yeah. At some point, okay, I think Tech really wants to go to bed.
Yes. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I've been trying to wrap it up, and then I just that tangent counter is so delicious.
See, I'll be honest, I don't think about the tangent counter very much, but when I see it go up, I'm like, funny.
Stonks.
Getting a middle finger from off camera now.
Well, there are actually 0 66 Thunderbirds. In fact, there are 0 Thunderbirds for sale in the UK on eBay.
I suspect if we carry on like this, one or both of these cameras are going to get shoved somewhere uncomfortable.
No.
It'll definitely
yeah,
be
okay,
against
maybe.
YouTube terms of service.
Oh my god. Okay.
All right. Do you want to take that offline and we wrap it up here?
Okay, sorry. I just the final note here, the one that I found.
14.
Yeah, the one it's not quite 'cause it's still on Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
That 66 yellow that I saw is currently up for 11 grand
Ooh,
as
fallen.
a good drivable car.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has been coming down. There is another one with I thought it was a rusty paint job, but it actually looks pretty good. This is 18. I don't know if your dad's seen this one.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, wow. That's
That's a look.
I think it's a 65 that he wants as well. Fucking hell. Oh.
and like, it's got some nice lace work in it. Side
I'll be
exits.
honest. If,
I just don't think that's his style.
No, I think it is too much. For like,
The
if I knew that it was my dad in that, and I saw it coming up the road, I'd be like, oh, I hope he doesn't see me and wave.
I would look at that and say that that paint job is very 70s era.
Is that just because it looks like wood grain from a distance?
Partially that, but you think of like a panel van, like the Love vans that
Yeah.
folks made. Like, that's very much it. I've lost my mouth.
I just think
This,
right.
however-
I just don't think that's a car that a British person should drive. That belongs in LA.
Yes. Yeah. That's the 66 that's up.
Yeah.
So that's the screen used one.
Okay.
But that is complete. Like, that's it, the chrome work is good. The
Oh, wow.
interior is really nice.
Yeah.
11 grand.
So I haven't looked at any of the T-Birds he's looked at apart
and
from that 8 grand one.
And that's a factory colour, the yellow.
Right. So I haven't looked at any of
it
the
has
ones that he's looked at.
Some little
and
bits on it.
So I don't know what he's seeing in it for 34 grand. Although I will say he has said the paint is perfect. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah, I
guessing
bet, yeah.
That's what he's like.
Yeah. But by the same token, you could put that into your body guy,
Yeah.
and for like 3 or 4 grand, have a new paint job on it in the same colour as it was,
Yeah.
and still be less than half into it.
Well, you know. Well, it's like we're only going to view the thing, right? We're not committed to buy it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we are burning like a couple of £100 just to look at a car.
Yeah, but it's a job.
Which is kind of wild to me, considering I've bought cars for less than it's going to cost us to go look at this car.
Yeah.
We're going back to our previous tangent.
Yeah. No,
We're looping
I
right. We're
promise I'm
closing
trying to-
tangents.
Yeah.
I've just sent you the link to that yellow one.
Cool. Yeah, I'll pass that on. So yeah, I think we really ought to draw it to a close, which is fine. I'm running out of stuff to talk about anyway. Tech is running out of patience, quite understandably.
Yeah. Hopefully tomorrow is going to be a better day than today was. Well,
we wrapped up 2 whole episodes today.
Our wonderful weather, which you may have seen this picture of us going, yeah, it's amazing.
The weather, that is. The weather was supposed to be amazing. Like half an hour later, it was hail.
Oh.
I feel like this is 15 tangents now.
Yeah, and then that happened
Yeah.
less than an hour later, and it was horrendous. So hopefully we have better luck than that. Hopefully we have more episodes between now and the next stream that you see. If you haven't already and you're not subscribed, how have you found us? Well done. Please do subscribe, like the video, just, keep those numbers going up. And we will see you on the next episode of, well, PedalBOX first, then HubCentric.
Which one's HubCentric?
This.
Right, okay.
I named it. I did a title card and everything. Not that you've ever seen it.
I did wonder what the relevant... I saw it in the thumbnail, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what it referred to.
It needed something besides just live.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Have a look at shop.pedalbox.show where you can buy merch like the stuff that we're clearly not wearing. And these
we've
that
got
aren't
other people's
available yet.
mugs.
Yeah, we've got other
We've got
people's
all of our
mugs.
friends'
We've
mugs.
got merch that you literally can't buy yet. We're doing really, really well promoting stuff. Stickers. Yeah, there you go. You could buy stickers. Do that. Yeah, get one of them. And we'll send that out to you, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to Tech for all of their enduring patience.